This episode is brought to you by BioCats. The BioCats Combine will take place July 10th here in Colorado at Powell Middle School. Make sure you sign up for that. Check out BioCats and check us out at Playmaker's Corner to find all the information on that. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmaker's Corner. I'm your host for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V. It is June 19th, 2026. It would have been passed already, but I'm just going to say it anyways. Happy Juneteenth out there to all of our fans and whatnot. But on this episode, we got a good one. This will be the beginning of a new series that we are starting, and I've thought about a whole bunch of different ways, or I guess names that we could call this new series. But here at the podcast, I think we've just called it the Texas Campaign, and that's what it is. It is the Texas Campaign. We are, in case you don't know, we're a podcast that spotlights the next generation of playmakers, right? Specifically in football. So that's women's college flag football. We've been covering that forever. Girls flag football, we had a hand in getting that sanctioned here in Colorado, and we've been covering it, and we're going to cover it again this fall as well. But, we feel like as a part of the flag football community, it is our responsibility to do everything we can to get this sport sanctioned in all 50 states, because I think right now we're hovering around 20. I don't know what's going on in Illinois, so maybe that number has went down just a little bit. If you know, make sure you check that out. And then I know there's some other states with pilot programs, like the state of Texas, which is where I am from, so this definitely is a little bit of a personal campaign for me as well. I would love to see my home state have girls flag football, be considered a varsity sport, and have it sanctioned, because, there are so many great players, people, coaches that we've met from the great state of Texas that supports our podcast here, and that we've been able to cover in the college ranks. And so we just really feel like here on the podcast, we gotta do everything we can to go ahead and campaign for Texas to sanction girls high school flag football. And so here's how we're gonna do that. Every month we're going to drop at least 2 episodes, maybe even more. It depends, but it's going to be covering Texas players, coaches, other people involved with Texas flag football. We're going to be opening up for interviews. We have already, or at least at the time that I am recording this, we are planning to reach out to a number of different people so that we could get interviews and have them tell their story here on the podcast and help us continue to help them campaign for Texas to sanction girls flag football, because this is where Texas is standing right now. So UIL, which is basically, the head of all their athletics, like CHSAA here in Colorado, or GHCSA or whatever it is in Georgia, FASA in Florida, right? This is the ruling body of athletics in Texas, the UIL Legislative Council. They went ahead and they met. This was in June. June 10th was when they went ahead and released this statement, their summary of, the meetings and whatnot. They listened out. They've been doing this. They've listened to a number of former players. Texas Fury, one of the best club teams, if not the best club team in the entire country for girls flag football. They have done a lot to send players over there to talk to these politicians and whatnot about getting it sanctioned, as well as a whole bunch of other people involved with flag football, talking to these people to get it sanctioned at this meeting. And then after the UIL Legislative Council meeting, this is what they came out with, and this is what they said, okay? You can find this on Instagram, like I said, posted on June 10th here, posted by UIL Texas, so you can check them out. It is on their second slide, and it says, in athletics, the council directed UIL staff to develop implementation plans and conduct a superintendent survey regarding 2 proposals, adding a shot clock in basketball and adding girls flag football. Both topics will be considered at the UIL Legislative Council meeting in October. And so that doesn't mean that girls flag football will be sanctioned. And so that really makes this time between now and October, and I looked it up, I believe it is October 18th, 19th. One of those dates is when they will potentially vote on it. We have this much time to go ahead and campaign for them to sanction girls flag football. And so we're going to do this by spotlighting some of the best from Texas that have been involved in the girls flag football, women's flag football scene here. And on this episode, we got two legends of the game that were pioneers, that made this thing happen, that have forged their own path, that have been super successful without flag football being sanctioned. But imagine how many more players can potentially reach these heights that Ava Wallace and Ashlea Klam have been able to in their time. And so we are doing this, like I said, to bring attention to this vote that's going to happen. The big thing is that they're conducting a superintendent survey. So if you are living in the state of Texas, I recommend, contacting your superintendents, contacting your school board, right? Expressing how much girls flag football should be sanctioned. The big thing they're really gauging for is interest, right? If there's an overwhelming interest, it's going to have to reflect in that survey for them to get it sanctioned. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of other things that they're going to have to figure out from there. But no matter what, the support has to be there. And so we are campaigning for you, if you are living in the state of Texas, to help us in getting this thing sanctioned. And so without further ado, let's talk about this episode and how it'll look here. So this will be a little bit of a film breakdown episode. It is a film breakdown episode. We actually broke down Ashlea Klam's film a really long time ago. It was when she was, I don't want to say a really long time ago. That's making us all feel old here, but I want to say this was when she was either a junior or incoming senior in high school. Episode 155 here. She was in the class of 2023, and we did a film breakdown on her. And so we'll revisit that film breakdown. I think there are some things that I would love to talk about again, because I was the one who broke down her film there. And then Ava Wallace is somebody that I think we always planned to do a film breakdown of before she got to the college level, and then we just kind of ran out of time and didn't get to. And so this is a long time coming. I've known about Ava Wallace's game, and I've taken notes about it, and then obviously watching her play in college, we have some things to talk about there as well. And so on this episode, we're going to spotlight these two great players. We're going to talk about what makes them great, what they do that is so generational and elite on the football field that it's undeniable. And it's been developed through years of hard work and just straight passion for the game. They've had to jump through hurdles and hoops that so many other athletes have not had to when it comes to playing football, and they've done that and more, and it reflects in how great their game is. And they have so much more they're going to contribute to the game moving on. They are really just getting started here, so we'll talk about that. And then on top of that, we're going to get real with it too. We're going to break down their national championship performance. They played against Warner, playing for Kaiser University. They played against Warner in the NAIA National Championships. That was an intense affair as well, and that wasn't the last time or the first time they saw them either. And so we'll really break down how that national championship went for them, and just, I guess, revisiting the national championship in general, which, there could be some good feelings, some bad feelings, but we're going to get real here on the Playmaker's Corner. We really try not to sugarcoat it, and we're here to talk about some football. So let's go ahead and talk about some football and get this thing started. All right, now let's go ahead and start with Ashlea Klam here. If you don't know who Ashlea Klam is, she is basically but she's the face of women's flag football, has all the sponsorships, Under Armour, Olipop, and, she is definitely killing it in the brand realm of things. On top of being, I think, the youngest member ever of Team USA's national team. She plays center for them. That was a couple years ago, and she still plays center. I think at the time right now, the Team USA Select Bowl is going on, so there is that happening right now. But she's been a representative of Team USA. She's been somebody that has represented girls flag football, women's flag football, like a constant invite to the Pro Bowl to help advertise that, and has played in so many celebrity games. She's become a massive name in the sport. Rightfully so, because I think her game, really speaks for itself. And then it's just kind of grown from there. It's been amazing to see her brand grow because this is really what it could be for a lot of athletes here in the future. She is setting those paths and making sure that other people can not only walk in her footsteps, but be able to build on her footsteps as well, which I think is absolutely massive there. But all of that social stuff, being said, or non-football stuff being said, let's get to the football part of it. So we actually got to do her film breakdown. This was episode 155 of the Playmaker's Corner. So almost 300 episodes ago. It was released on April 29th, 2022, along with a couple other players. Courtney Cromer, who I believe is on Warner's roster still as a quarterback. Brooke Swenson out of Florida. You had Michaela Reimer as well, I believe, out of Florida. Brenda Ramirez, who would end up being her teammate on Kaiser. And then obviously Lauren Clark, her longtime club teammate. And then ironically, the one who actually beat her in the national championship. We will revisit Lauren Clark's film breakdown on another episode during this Texas campaign that we are running through this off season. But I didn't want to put her and Ashley on the same episode. Not just yet, but we're gonna get there for sure though. And so it was really something being able to cover her because, even at that time, we knew how big of a star she was going to be. Just a little bit of background information. I'm going to give you actually a little bit of background information. So I was actually supposed to be the graduate assistant over at Midland under head coach Jason Jones. He was the first head coach for their college flag football program over there at Midland a couple years ago. It was like maybe 2021, I want to say, is when we went out to our first scouting event thing. I think it was like a Team USA trials type of deal. And then I want to say it was the one tournament in Indianapolis, 2021. And that is the first time I got to see a lot of club flag football players play, including Ashlea Klam. And at the time, my assignment was, I was going to scout. I was going to scout, look for some potential recruits to bring over to Midland here. And number one, right? I think the first day we got there, it was Team USA stuff. And the player that stood out to me, like, easily was Ashlea Klam. Obviously you have the frame, but I think the athleticism really popped out right away. Just watching her games, it's something that separated her from other players. And you gotta keep in mind as well, this is a Team USA event right now, so it's not like she's just dominating scrubs. Like, this is arguably the best that the country had to offer at the time in this age range, and she's just going off. She's head topping, she's catching the ball, she's outrunning players, she's being physical out there, she's doing her thing. And I will never forget being like, man, we gotta offer her, coach. And she's like a sophomore or something like that. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if we offer her now and then, we could try to convince her to come to Nebraska, that was never going to happen. Let's just keep it a buck. She was too big of a star for that to ever to happen, and that's nothing against Midland, but to see how big of a star she would be, it would have been a hard sell for sure, but definitely one that I was willing to take on as a young, inexperienced GA, right? Now, years later, obviously, I would end up turning down that GA spot so that I could go the podcast route here, and I still got to cover Ashlea Klam first in high school with this film breakdown episode, and then years later as she joined Kaiser, committed to them, and has had some really good years, some of the best years ever for a flag football player, really so far in women's college flag football history. But you know what? Let's talk about what I had to say on that episode. At the time, I was going off a lot of highlight clips, which, there was a lot out there, but a lot of highlight clips, some game film from her 5v5 days. I don't think she really did any 7-on-7 at all. But, as a receiver, as a DB, still it translates in my opinion here. So, and obviously I got to watch her play live as well, not too far from that point here. But, let's just revisit some of the things I said on that episode here, which was a while ago, years ago, but I called her a Deion Sanders primetime type of player. The top recruit in 2023. I loved her height, frame, and catch radius, elite ball skills. I think those are all things that I felt like really separated her from other types of players. That combination of height, frame, catch radius, and then just the ability to go get the football there. It was something that we didn't see too much of. I know at the time, and I mean, this is just kind of how fast the game of flag football or college flag football is changing, but it felt like at the time, Kennedy Foster was probably the tallest receiver in college flag at 5'10". At the time, there really weren't any other DBs or players like that were that height, and so at the time, it definitely stood out a lot more. Now, you have a lot more players in that 5'10", 5'11" range here, but, it was something that was definitely different about her. But the other thing I really liked was that she fought through contact on catches, and was just her ability in general to go make a tough catch. I felt like she really raised the floor of, or she could potentially raise the floor of a lot of college offenses, just because if you could get the ball in her general vicinity, she's going to go make the play. And that is something that as an opposing defense, you got to pay attention to. And then that transforms an offense that does have a player like an Ashlea Klam who can just go make plays. And even when you think you got her, she still gets you because her offense is that much better. On top of that, really liked her top end speed and separation on those deep balls. I felt like when, she was going vertical, it was really hard to keep up with her long, strong, tough strides right there. Obviously, she's a former track athlete as well over in Vandergrift in Texas, and it showed when she got out into open field and, was given an opportunity to just go outrun somebody. On top of that, you add the vertical that she possesses. I think this is something that, there's a lot of things to talk about Ashlea Klam's game, but when it comes to high pointing the football, she gets up there pretty consistently. And, that's something that you see with great track athletes. The good ones are always the most explosive ones. The ones that can not only, have fast, strong strides and, have great starts in the 100, but could also jump out the gym. And that was a great example of what a great track athlete, an elite track athlete looks like, which is crazy because I don't even think that's her main events. I'm pretty sure she's a thrower or she threw in college, but that's neither here or there. I also loved that she played both sides of the football, including safety. Did say I considered her more of a receiver and that she is too talented to not play both ways, which I still think is true today to a degree, but definitely considered her more of an offensive player. I love the confidence and swagger that she had, especially having more than less. And I think that definitely has paid off. Love that when this was something that I think is another thing that is more specific towards her and does speak volumes to the chemistry that she had with her quarterback, and who we're going to talk about later on in this episode. But I loved that when the play breaks down, she just had the natural ability to go find open space and make broken offensive plays work. That was something that happened over and over and over and over again, just different ways of being flexible and making those things work. That's what separates good players from great ones. Great ones go find space and make something work, even though the play didn't go as planned, right? So there you go there. Gave her a plus for dominating in fives because it is kind of a smaller field, less room to work with. I really felt like a player, I don't know if I said this on the episode, but I felt like a player like Ashlea Klam, who has the frame and athleticism that she has, will probably, dominate more, thrive more in a bigger setting in sevens, which is a little bit closer to 11s football and whatnot, because it allows her more room to run. It allows her more space to just go post up and make big plays there. And I think that was something that would really translate well going to the sevens level in college. And then last but not least, said she had great body control. That's another thing that makes her elite. Funny enough, I said she reminds me a lot of Kennedy Foster in the comparisons that I was able to make there. I felt like she is very similar to Kennedy Foster right now in their game, but I think I liked Ashlea a little bit more compared to college Kennedy. Like, I liked high school Ashlea more than college Kennedy just because I felt like she was a little bit more aggressive towards the football, stronger, a little bit of a better athlete there. Sorry, Kennedy. I know you're a fan of the podcast. This isn't hating on you. This was just how high I was on Ashlea Klam coming out of high school there. And then I said, obviously, she'd be a number one receiver on most NAIA teams if she graduated right now, which would have been early. She would have graduated as a junior at the time I dropped that episode. And I was that confident in her. Now, some things that I said that she could still improve on. I wanted to see more from her route running, saw roundoffs, just wanted to see more cleaner short and medium routes, right? Wanted tougher cuts, faster footwork, improvement on those details, and just wanted to see more misses in open space. I wanted to see her really like get those yak yards after the catch here, rather than, just outrunning defenders in straight races, right? Can you go make something happen in tight spaces and go get those extra yards? And this is funny because I said Leah Cruz, who was somebody also played a little bit for Texas Fury, played for St. Thomas these last 2 years. But I said that was the person I really liked at receiver, and I felt like Texas Fury had the top two receivers because, Leah, she was somebody that, maybe was not the dominant physical deep ball, jump ball force that Ashlea was, but could do those things like, just be tough in open space, be tough in between the hash marks, and, get those extra yards that Ashlea couldn't necessarily do couldn't necessarily do at that high of a level at the time, not yet at least. Mentioned how Ottawa was Ashlea's first official offer, and how I think Kaiser had her out on a visit, and I assume they offered her at the time as well. And I did make this prediction. I said if Ashlea was recruited successfully to Kaiser, that she might give them a national championship or two in her time there. We'll talk about that. And then I also talked about breaking the bank for Ashlea if you are a college program, and just, hey, if you want a player that you're going to go all in on, this has to be the player. This is the player that you break the bank for as far as NIL funds go, as far as scholarship funds go. She is that big of a game changer. So there you go there. And then I also mentioned doing a film breakdown on Ava Wallace, which is really funny. I think it's really funny foreshadowing there. So there you go there. And honestly, let's just go ahead and talk about it, right? Let's talk about her game just a little bit here. Because we are revisiting it, there's not too much more I wanted to add. I watched a lot of her college film. Obviously, I've watched not every game, but almost every game since she's played in college. I've watched a lot of her postseason games as well, as competition has really, spiked and, raised as teams are getting desperate and playing at a high level, and they are more familiar with their game at the end of the season than the beginning of a season, and so was able to watch a lot of games to really come to this conclusion of her updated film breakdown. And so let's start with the strengths. First off, I was right. The blend of athleticism and frame really separated her from other athletes. Funny enough, in that last breakdown episode, I said she was maybe 5'11", 6 foot. Funny enough, she's listed at like 5'8" or 5'9" on the Kaiser thing. I feel like her height has steadily gone down. Team USA has listed her at less than 5'10". It feels like maybe it's because she feels like a larger than life athlete, character, role model for everyone out there, but it feels like she's taller than what she's listed at. But I think another thing to add on is that when she's out on the field, her vertical really pops off the screen. She's a taller receiver, but then you add on that she's able to get up there as well. That separates her from a lot of other players. Players that are taller than her, players that are shorter than her. She plays bigger than other players, I think is what I'm really trying to say right there. And that's something that, upon watching a lot of her college film and just watching her film a second time, I think is the thing that really pops out with her. She's a taller receiver, but the explosiveness to just jump out the building and go make these plays is something that really, really separates her. On top of that, I mean, I was right. Her hand-eye coordination and hands are second to none. She is the head top queen. She will always attack the football, whether it's offense or defense. I think that's worth noting, and she'll do it aggressively. It really isn't a 50-50 ball when she's going up to get it. She's so comfortable, getting that leverage, boxing people out, and just fighting through the physicality to go make plays. She will initiate the physicality to start, and I think that is a problem for a lot of players because I think you got players from all over the country, right? They play varying levels of flag football. There's varying levels of physicality when it comes to that. But, just because it's flag football doesn't mean it can't be physical. If she's going for the ball, it's fine, in my opinion. And that's just football. There's going to be a physical aspect to it. And if you cannot keep up, then you cannot defend her. That is the name of the game. I think her physicality is something that really showed throughout her film, even in her freshman year, moving forward. I think when it comes to the game in general, she will not be knocked off her rocker. And I think she always responds well to a little bit of physicality as well. Watching some of her games against like a team like Ottawa or St. Thomas with Tashumba Washington, right? She never had an issue with the physicality. At least I don't think so. I felt like, she always held up well, stood strong, stood on business, and continuously made plays, right? And, those are defenses that, I'll watch other receivers go up against, especially for the first time, and be like, it's not like, you're a great receiver, but, you can't be complaining about these plays, right? And sure, there'll be a complaint here and there, right? I think she's a star, and I hate to say it, but has earned maybe a little bit of a whistle there, but she is somebody that is also going to bring the physicality if given the green light to do that, and if the refs are going to allow that. It depends game from game, right? But that's something that definitely separates her from other players. Not afraid to be physical, and it shows. Obviously, between the whistle, that doesn't mean she's a dirty player. I think some people misinterpret that, but I think when it comes down to playing the game, she's not going to let a little bit of pushing and shoving get in her head, and in fact, she's going to be doing the knocking out, if anything. And I think it shows a lot on defense when they allow her to fly around at safety. I mean, she is fighting through these receivers' hands, bodies for the deflection or a pick. And like I said, it's never dirty. I think some people see the physicality and see it, there are times it gets a little bit out of hand and whatnot, but at the end of the day, she is always making sure, or at least trying to get a hand on the football. It is what it is. There's going to be big collisions in this sport, but if you get a hand on the football, you can't really argue with it. Now, sometimes she doesn't quite get her hand on the football, and she's maybe a little bit late. But if they're not going to call it, it is what it is. I mean, I think 99% of the time, that's a little high. 90% of the time, her hands are there on time, and she's going for the football. Now, what happens after that? It is what it is, right? But she's going for the football. I think that is within play when it comes to playing any sort of football, tackle, flag, whatever it is. You as a DB, your responsibility is to either force a turnover or force an incompletion. And if you are not being strong enough to force an incompletion, then your physicality needs to go up. And just plain and simple, Ashlea is not going to be out-toughed. She is somebody that I have seen make receivers be scared to catch balls over the middle. And you can't do that, because there's going to be a natural physicality that comes to this game, and you can't blame a great player for raising that level within, the rules of that game. And I think that is something that is awesome to see, right? That is something that on the international level, it's a physical game on the international level, and you can't expect players to be great if they don't acclimate to that, right? And so I will credit her for making, this college game a little bit tougher, right? I think the way Ottawa plays as well, St. Thomas, some of these other squads, Thomas as well, they played with some physicality and they match each other with that. And I think Ashlea, for Kaiser, has really been the one to bring that type of energy, that type of physicality to the game that you need to win these games against tough teams, against great programs. And that's something that I really love about her game, because she really enforces that on both sides of the football. Last but not least, I mean, she can play both ways, and I will say it has noticeably improved. She has noticeably improved, in my opinion, as a defender. Her anticipation and recognition of patterns on defense is special here. Just watching her just play that cover 1, cover 2 zone for Kaiser and letting her cook, like, she sees the field at a different pace, at a different level than other defenders. I mean, she's a vet at this point, right? She's played 3 years of college at the time I'm recording this, and just watching her just analyze and make decisions, like, she's analyzing at an extremely high level back there, and also executing at an extremely high level. I think one thing that I was gonna, kind of ding her on was, her man-to-man coverage ability, because I remember out of high school it maybe wasn't the best, but as I've watched her develop that from freshman to junior year, like, she's working on those leverages. Maybe the footwork isn't as quick as some of these receivers she's going up against, but she knows how to use her body, use her space to, make that work and, just be an athlete out there as well and do her best. And that's something that I gotta give her credit on. She's really, really put in work as a defender. Like I said, I loved her at safety coming out of high school, but I think, she's really turned into somebody that, on the college level, if you wanted to put her in man-to-man on the outside, she would be able to hold her own and more. Now, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think that's the best use of her skills, but it's something to have in your back pocket just in case. So there you go. Now, areas of improvement. I think all the stuff after the catch is probably still stuff she needs to improve on here. She's a fast and strong athlete, but I would just love to see just more continue to work on after the catch stuff. Personally, though, I will acknowledge this in the last couple years. This is something that she has definitely worked on. As you can see, some of those numbers rising per catch and whatnot. But, I just would like to see her work on that elusivity. I know she has a little bit of a spin here, planting-wise. Our feet is getting faster and whatnot as well. There's definitely improvement. I think we are far from seeing peak Ashlea Klam in that sense, where I think she could still unlock another gear in her after the catch ability. And I'm excited to see that for sure. I think that's something that, at the time when I did the first film breakdown, I was like, she could get a spin, be a little crafty with a little sidestep here and there. Like maybe, that's the cap of her abilities as an athlete, but just watching her continue to develop and grow, I really feel like she could break somebody down in space, like a high level, potential international level type of player in space, and juke him out. I think that is something that, if she continues to work on, it could be a possibility, right? I think on the college level, she's already kind of reaching, that level of play where if she's in one-on-one, she could definitely juke somebody out a decent amount of the time, right? Or at least get them going in one direction and then switch directions pretty quickly and explode out of that cut. That's just something that I felt like at the time, as a high schooler, maybe she was a little bit capped on, but, there's some potential there for sure, and I'm interested in seeing how far she can push that after the catch ability. And then last but not least, I mean, this is really nitpicking. There's really only two things that I'm looking at here, but I will say that she is primarily a zone safety, and I did praise her ability to play in man, or at least her improvement on that through these last couple years. I actually really like her in the red zone. Like I said, maybe not the best use of her skills in man as a defender there, but I do think if she was to continue to improve on her man-to-man ability, like I think about elite safeties, I think about Deshaun Washington, right? She was somebody who was elite as a zone player, but in man-to-man, like she would lock them up. They would not even have the ball looked over that way because she would be playing them so tight that there's literally no opening there unless a quarterback forces a pass. Now, Ashlea, we'll see. I think, her foot speed, the capabilities of that, the potential of where it can be is higher than where I thought originally. If she continues to work on that and, continues to put in work as a man-to-man defender, that could really take her game to the next level as a defender. Because I don't think she's on the level of a man-to-man, like, one-on-one defender, not in the same way as a Ashlea Washington, right? At least I don't think so. Not yet, right? Could she get there? Maybe it would be different because she's a longer defender, and so I think there are other things that you could kind of leverage there rather than foot speed and whatnot. But I think that is maybe the only thing, and it's so nitpicky, I'm gonna be honest with you. But if she really wants to be, an all-around, maybe the best player ever, being an elite man-to-man defender would probably be the only other thing she could really work on, in my opinion. And that, involves studying patterns of opposing receivers, knowing what they like, don't like, playing the leverage game, right? Recognizing patterns and being able to jump those, or, allowing them to be ran and then being able to jump those, right? That's a whole thing. And like I said, I don't know necessarily if that's what you should be focusing on if you're trying to develop an Ashlea Klam, unless you really, really need that depth at corner. I think she's an amazing safety, and she's somebody that you have to have, like, just roam around. But it's something that, as far as having a complete game, that's maybe something you could add on. Because offensively, I think, it is what it is. She's more of an offensive player than a defensive player anyways. But if you want her to be a more complete player, the most complete player ever, I think working on that and just bringing that man-to-man level, defensive level to the next one would be up there. And even then, I feel like it's still pretty good. The red zone looks I saw looked really good to me. Especially in that national championship game here. But, I wouldn't put her I wouldn't put her out there alone as a corner, for a whole game. Let's just say that. Even if I had, like, Ashlea Washington back there at safety, I don't know if that's the best use of her skills there. And, that just means she could continue to improve on that. Yeah, that's it. But I feel like that's super nitpicky. I don't know if even that's an area of improvement. I truly feel like Ashlea Klam, like, just stepping a step back, right? I know I got really analytical and, nitpicked and took apart her game just a little bit here, but I really feel like Ashlea Klam is as close as you can get to a complete football player on the field when it comes to being a skill player, wide receiver, DB. I think she is super complete, or as complete as you could get, right? She's working with her physical means, obviously. Like, you're not going to have the perfect football player ever, but you're going to have a player that knows what they can do within their physical means, who can continue to push, where they're at physically, and be a better athlete and whatnot, while being a smarter, student of the game as well. And, she has put in that work. And you combine that with everything, top tier athlete, top tier student of the game, top tier producer on both sides of the ball, top tier leader as well. There are always great things we hear about Ashlea leading on the field. Top tier energy bringer, right? All these things, top tier teammate as well, which we'll talk about more in a little bit here. Just all of these things make her, I would say, the number one flag football player in all women's college flag football right now. I think, if there was going to be a draft for a professional flag football league out of just collegiate flag football players, Ashlea Klam would have to go number one. I have no doubts about that. I'm nitpicking at certain things here and there, but look at NFL draft scouting reports, right? They do that all the time. She is a combination of so many great players. She is a true two-way player, and somebody that, is just electric. She's somebody that you can put on either side of the ball, and you are getting an elite flag football player. And they will make their presence known, because it's not a matter of feeding them the ball or obligation. It's a matter of time. Give it some time and her presence will be known on the football field. And that is an inevitable thing that you cannot teach. You can teach players to, do this in this scenario and improve on this and that, but eventually you reach a certain level of greatness in a player where it's like, hey, if you just let them play football, they'll show you why they're the best. They'll show you. And I think that's the most obvious with a player like Ashlea Klam. There's a reason why she's the youngest player on Team USA, or the youngest player ever to make a Team USA roster. There's a reason why, she is the face of women's college flag football. There's a reason why, the NFL does all these collaborations with her. There's a reason why she gets all this NIL money. Yes, because, she's built her brand well and all that. Yes, that's a big reason. But at its core, when it comes down to the game of football, you are not going to find somebody that produces at this high of a level on both sides of the football. Let's go ahead and talk about the stats here, because I think that backs it up here. I talked about what makes her great and whatnot, but let's talk about her career stats through her 3 years. These 3 years she's played for Kaiser. Most recently, she has announced that she's committing to Cal Poly. We'll see how that goes. But, let's talk about her here at her time at Kaiser, starting with the offensive side of the football. Freshman year starts right away, 19 games, 79 receptions, 116 yards, 27 touchdowns. I think she led her team in receiving touchdowns that year. That includes a team with a elite receiver in Kennedy Foster, as well as a million other great receivers over there who played at a high level. Defensively, for them as well, had 7 interceptions, also 19 flag pulls and a sack and 11 pass deflections from her safety spot, which is still pretty good right there. So playing both ways, playing 19 games, extremely productive there. I will say, it tapered off a little bit, I want to say, on the back end of her freshman year. I know she suffered kind of a tough injury in that tournament there. She only had like 3 receptions in her last 2 games there. And so that was tough to see. But, as a freshman, right, you're adjusting to the number of games played in a season. There's definitely worse things that could have happened. Going into her sophomore year here, 20 games now, 62 receptions, so 17 less receptions, and played 1 more game, mind you, but 1,002 yards and 19 touchdowns. Defensively, continues to improve, 24 flag pulls, which is more than the season before, doubles her interceptions with 15, also doubles her pass deflections with 22. So you are actively seeing her become a more dominant force on defense. And you got to remember, she's playing safety. And really, when you're playing anywhere on defense, like, offenses have the choice to go away from you. But when you are this dominant of a defensive player, sometimes there's just nowhere to hide. And you got players that force you to not be able to hide. And you got to face them up front. And that is what a true great player does. They force you to face them up front because you cannot hide from them. And Ashlea made that very clear in her sophomore year. And then her last year right here, 19 games played. My bad. Let me move up. 19 games played, 85 receptions, so the most in her career here. 956 receiving yards, so a little bit less there, but 21 receiving touchdowns, which is about middle of the pack, more than the year before. And then defensively, again, more flag pulls this year, 34 flag pulls, 12 interceptions, so 3 less, and then 20 pass deflections, a little bit less. So a slight dip in interceptions and pass deflections, but like I said, teams are actively avoiding her. At this point, she is like an all-conference player 2 years in a row. For us, an all-PMC player at safety at least 2 years in a row. And she is dominating over and over again. You are not going to find many other numbers like this where she is going over 1,000 yards, going over double-digit touchdowns. She has 67 career receiving touchdowns in 3 years. And played in 58 games. So she's scoring a touchdown and one at least every game in her career. That's just how dominant she is, and that's big time. And usually those touchdowns come in moments where, hey, you might have to go make a tough catch, or you really need a big play, and she comes through time after time again. These stats do not lie. And then defensively, her defensive stats have gone up every single year. Her flagpoles have gone up despite, playing on these talented Kaiser defensive teams and also playing at safety. Like, her flagpoles have gone up, her interceptions and pass deflections, that jump from freshman to sophomore year was crazy, and then you see a little bit of a dip but still maintaining into her junior year. That is special. Those are all things that makes her special. All the things I talked about in her film breakdown, in her revisit, it pays off, right? Those are the things that make a great football player. Those are the things that make a face of the game. Now, with all of that being said, super accomplished player, right? And, maybe this will get a little controversial in this next segment here. All that being said, right? Great player, Team USA. They've won their conference. She's won the Sun Conference for Kaiser before, right? They've made deep playoff runs. They've made it to the national championship, I believe, 2 times, and then the semis before as well. So, nothing less than the semis as far as postseason career goes. And so really, when you look at Ashlea Klam's collegiate career, right, also she has all these records for Kaiser, a program that is known for their wide receivers. She's queen, top dog of it all when it comes to those numbers there. But the only thing really she's missing as far as legacy standpoint, when we are talking strictly about her collegiate career, is a national champion. So let's talk about this last national championship. It was a quick reminder, Ashlea and her community and, all the people she's been around over in Texas, they helped build the player that Ashlea has been today. Imagine if girls flag football was sanctioned in Texas. Make sure you talk to your local people down in Texas, your superintendent, school boards about that, so that we can get it sanctioned here by the UIL vote in October, which, granted, is a little late already, but better late than never, right? So let's get into this national championship here for Ashlea Klam. And in case you don't know how it went down, so basically how it went down is that this was a double elimination bracket. So there was a good chance that they were going to see a team twice for the national championship. And so for Kaiser, they had a great season. Until they played Warner. Just looking at their schedule here, this is how it went, right? For Kaiser, they were winning a whole bunch of games, and then at the end of the regular season, this is their only second regular season loss. They lost to Ottawa earlier on. This was one of their first games here. They lost to them by 4, which we'll talk about that when talking about Ava Wallace's film breakdown just a little bit. But that was the only loss they had, and then they ended up losing to Warner 13-26 in the regular season, which is tough. 14 days later, they would go ahead and play Warner for the not the national championship, for the Sun Conference title, and they would lose to them again by a similar score, 14-25. All right, and then they would play Warner 2 more times. So basically, they would see them roughly 4 times in less than a month here, and unfortunately they would continue to lose to Warner. While that gap closed a little bit, they would continue to lose to Warner. And I'm laying this all out so you could understand, the background of this. And so, they'd beat Kansas Wesleyan, even though that was a little bit of a scare. And then they would go on, they would beat Ottawa again, and then they would lose to Warner 7-13. And so from that point, when they lost to Warner, if they were to see Warner again, they would have to beat them twice. They would beat K-Dub to get into the national championship, and then that sets up the national championship, or at least one of the games, on May 9th here. If they win this one, they would have to beat Warner again, since up to this point, Warner was undefeated. And so this is basically how it went down for Ashlea Klam. as a receiver, really did not have too much going on there. In that Warner game, 3 receptions, in this national championship game against Warner, 3 receptions, 15 yards, and a touchdown, which is all right. But, we're here to talk about that national championship game and what happened and how come they didn't win it. In my opinion, the reason they were not able to win, one of the reasons why Kaiser was not able to win the national championship was because I felt like they did not scheme enough for Ashlea Klam. And honestly, this isn't the first time. She's had 85 receptions, and, I think that's the most she's ever had, 79 and 62 from years past. But, if I am being so for real right now, there is no reason why she shouldn't have had multiple 100 reception seasons by now. And, some of that is because you have so many other great players around her, too. Hey, totally understand that as well. But, and this is me as media, but also me as a coach as well, because I do coach flag too. If you are in a position to win a national championship, to win a conference title, why would you not have plays schemed up for your best offensive playmaker? Why would you not? And it just kind of felt like they did not do enough to get her the ball, to get her looks that made sense. It was a lot of short stuff. It's a reason it was 3 receptions for 15 yards and a touchdown. And yeah, it worked up until, this point, but you got to remember, this is the 4th time you're seeing this team in a month. And so that is outside of Ashlea's, control. As a receiver, you run the routes that are there, but I am watching her run these routes, right next to the center in the slot, and it's Warner is prepared for it. They're not running anything that Warner is not prepared for. And she's doubled, naturally, right? And if not, it's a great player that's over there. And this is a good defensive team from Warner. OMG, Omariah Gordon over the top. And then you got either Finley or Vincentini or Lauren Clark, covering her. That's a tough bracket to break as is. And when you are just kind of running Ashlea Klam off and not really focusing on her as a focal point of this offense, I don't know. I don't know if that's the best strategy to win. So there's that. So I was able, though, to evaluate her a lot more at defense because I think that's really where she made her presence known on the defensive side of the football. And so I'm going to go ahead and evaluate her mostly on the defensive side because, like I said, there just really wasn't anything going on the offensive side. It felt like they were really not in a hurry to get her the ball at all. So if you're not going to give her looks, then I can't evaluate her. And so let's talk about her in the national championship. First drive. Lined up at safety, obviously she plays a lot of that cover 1 zone, sometimes cover 2 zone for them. Sometimes, they'll go 0 and she'll play man-to-man, but they like to have her over the top to erase plays, and I think that is the most efficient way to use her. And it was obvious in that first drive, she's putting an obvious cap over the top of that Warner offense, an electric offense, mind you, that has multiple 1,000-yard receivers, 20-plus 15-plus touchdown receivers, right? You don't want any big plays. You put Ashlea Klam over the middle, and they really didn't want to test her early on, right? They wanted to find a rhythm. They wanted to work away from her, and, that is the Ashlea Klam effect. Now, on the second drive, and you can look this up if you have the stream, 24-57, third down, Ashlea lines up in the slot here, showing that she's playing man, but she backs up into a zone pretty late here, and Catherine Hutchinson just does not see Ashlea Klam. And she actually goes ahead and drops back because she's reading this. She's lined up in the slot, but she knows she has the zone here over the top. She basically backs up and almost jumps this post route, though. Catherine Hutchinson tries to squeeze the throw to Anna Vincentini over the middle. She's running this route from the left side. Ashlea is lined up where she is running towards, and if this ball was on the money, This would have been an easy interception over the middle because Ashlea Klam definitely baits her into this. Fortunately for Warner, this ball does sail a little bit here. I think Hutchinson sees Klam a little bit late. And it's like, okay, let me try to outthrow the coverage a little bit. And she overthrows Vincenzini, who she's hoping runs underneath it. But Ashley does just an excellent job here, just tracking it, cutting it off, and accelerating towards the football. She puts out a hand and almost picks this ball here, but it is maybe a foot out of reach. And this is elite safety play right here. Just seeing her recognize the play, flip her hips, track the ball, cut off the Vincenzini route, and then accelerate just as fast as you can to get a hand on this, because you know if she gets a hand on this, this is an interception, and she forces an incompletion right here, and that is something that she makes Catherine Hutchinson remember moving forward throughout the rest of this game. You cannot trust her. You cannot trust to throw deep when Ashlea Klam is roaming around, because you know she is looking for it. And so after that forces a fourth down. That forces Warner to go back to their strategy of throwing away from Ashley. So they're throwing to the outside receivers, most away from her. And that extends the drive here. And so they do get across midfield. And that brings up another big second down early in this game. 28:55 is the time stay up there. And Hutchinson tries to find Avalon Lux Offerman, the freshman, on a crosser route here. And it's just very ill-advised because it's open for a split second. And then Ashley closes so fast on this pass here. Like, she covers at least 10 to 15 yards and just goes for the ball and knocks it away. And it's the right amount of physicality. Shout out my guy Corey over there. Yes, it's a big crash. He was announcing this game. But I saw her hands go for the ball, you know, and she obviously goes for the ball and she deflects it. You know, she could have caught it, right? Maybe if she got there half second earlier, but, you know, she closes on this one quick because she was low-key baiting it, and she just erases this play by happening, attacks Avalon's hands. This is a big collision, but she attacks her hands first, so that's the thing that matters, and the play is incomplete. And that is something, that's another reminder to Catherine Hutchinson, who's still trying to test her deep. Hey, keep trying to do that. Keep trying to do that. And as a quarterback, you know, you just cannot test a safety like this. You know, she tried it early on, but you cannot do that anymore. And it was just an ill-advised pass. You have to protect your receiver on this one, but you know, it's a quarterback's responsibility to not put those receivers in that position here. And Ashley honestly was just sitting on that route, waiting for them to do that, and she made them pay. They would eventually get the first after that, but still throwing away from her. They will not attempt anything deeper than 10, and so that would end up forcing a punt here. Great drive. This is a drive right here. That second drive of that national championship, hey, they're going to go ahead and test you. They're going to see, it's early Saturday morning or whatever, it's Saturday morning. They're going to see how awake you are. Ashley shows them right there, I'm here. You need to change your game plan or you're going to suffer these consequences, because yes, she forced incompletions, but there are only so many times you can test a playmaker like this before an incompletion turns into a turnover. You know, 3 strikes and you're out. So, you already got 2 right there. That second down drive goes ahead and sends a message to Warner that they got to change their game plan. That theoretically should tell Kaiser, hey, this is what they're going to be doing a little bit more of from here on out. And so here we go on the third defensive drive here for Kaiser. Warner's backed up pretty much against their own end zone here. It was a failed offensive attempt by Kaiser. And, you know, they play pretty conservatively. Like I said, they're not trying to test Klam. They're trying to not have a safety here. And then they end up punting it. So good job. No score there. That brings up yet another scoreless drive. And like I said, it could have been worse, right? This could have been a scenario where the Kaiser defense really got aggressive, sent more people, and forced Hutchinson into a bad throw. And, you know, they still get a stop, so there is that. And I think that's still a good thing though for both teams. Now the fourth defensive drive, once again, this is basically the same thing here. Backed up against their own end zone, they don't test Klam deep. They end up giving them the ball back after that. So that's two straight drives. See, like I said, after that second drive, that's two straight drives where, hey, we are not going to take our shot here. Even though we need these yards, we can't get those because there's a playmaker over the middle. That's the effect. Fifth drive here, it is a third down past midfield. Klam is sitting in a cover one, does a nice job coming down to take away a wide open out route look here. It looks like the defender just got beat really badly in man here, and Catherine Hutchinson's on the run, and so Klam does a nice job coming down and forcing a much harder throw than one right in front of her, and so it's a deep pass. Unfortunately, that is a PI called on Kaiser, but I do love how Ashlea came down from her zone look here to take away this just easy pass here, because Hutchinson could have thrown it right here and it would have been an easy first down. Instead, they force a tougher pass. Unfortunately, the back end did not have Ashlea's back there, as it was a PI, and so that extends the drive. But the defense will do a good job coming up and making pulls after that, as they're trying to get creative. Warner is finding out that, they are not going to be able to outthrow Klam's coverage here. They're not going to be able to get away with some of these throws deep or even medium with Ashlea Klam. So they're trying to get some more yards here, by feeding their playmakers in Mariah Gordon and just making her make people miss and having her go the opposite of Ashlea Klam, because Ashlea Klam's a great flag puller, right? I don't think that's something I mentioned in the film breakdown, but she's a very good, very consistent flag puller. If you could run away from her, that's what you should do, and that is what they do. Eventually, a couple handoffs, it comes down to a fourth down here, and so here we go, fourth down. Once again, they're running a cover one look here, Klam over the top. Everything is covered, but there's a penalty against the Kaiser rusher here because she runs into a blocker, and that once again extends this drive for a second time on this fifth drive. So already, there's nothing you can do if you're Ashlea Klam. You're doing your job. You've gotten this defense to a fourth and third down, manageable ones where they should have gotten the ball back by now, but it is just very sloppy defensive play from all around here. So now that eventually brings up a first down in the red zone, and I don't know what possesses Kaiser to do this, but in the red zone they go man. I don't want to bleep this out, so I'm just going to say, why the freak are we in man in the red zone? Do you know how many 15-plus touchdown receivers are on Warner's roster? If you don't know, it is the most in women's college football history. So why would we go in man when your corners have already shown to struggle on this drive alone? Warner was waiting on this. They see Ashlea line up in man-to-man. They basically have the perfect play that isolates Ashlea out of this play completely, because it's man, so there's nothing she could do. They isolate her out of this play completely, run the perfect play away from her, and it is a very easy touchdown. There is no way Ashlea Klam could have made a play on this ball, because she is playing her man, which is away from where most of the action is going down, so she is completely taken out of the play, and it's just an easy look. So easy of a look that they put Mariah Gordon in at quarterback, and she made the throw. Also, by the way, playing man against Mariah Gordon at quarterback is definitely a choice, because, yeah, you want to have your best defenders have their back to a running quarterback. Bruh. I don't know who I don't know. This was the wrong play call to make. I don't know who made it, but this was the wrong play call to make. I don't know why we're in man at all. I don't know why we're in man at all. Especially, like I said, against a running quarterback, typically you want to be in a zone so everyone's facing the right direction, right? But, and, could help out in case she decides to run it. But it just was a really bad call. And honestly, I didn't realize how bad of a call until I replayed it over and over and over again. And I'm just watching this and I'm like, this could not have been the worst call for Kaiser and the absolute best call for Warner. So good that a receiver threw a touchdown. And honestly, watching Ashlea Klam and man wasn't even bad defense. It was just a really bad call. And by the way, this will get Warner on the board here for the first time this game here. And that's when you start feeling some of the momentum begin to shift here. Luckily, there's a good rush for once on the PAT, so it does not allow Warner to take the lead, because that's basically what's on the line here. This ties the game here. But I digress. There really wasn't anything more Ashlea Klam could have done here. I thought she played excellent. I thought there were multiple times where this Kaiser defense should have got them off the field because of how good Ashlea Klam was playing, but it felt like they gave them almost every single opportunity possible to score and tie this game on this fifth drive here in the third quarter. I don't know what to say, but Ashlea Klam did her job. All right, now let's go to the sixth defensive drive here. By the way, there are eight defensive drives for Kaiser, so just keeping that in mind here. We're almost done here. But the sixth defensive drive, a lot more cover one, cover two looks with a man across the board here. Klam is, though, in a zone, so it does allow her to still have the potential to erase some plays. And once again, Warner does not challenge her. This ends up being a punt. Kaiser gets the ball back. Now that brings up a seventh drive here. On this drive, it is obvious that Warner has found something here. And so they are feeding OMG the ball, who's lining up as far away from Ashlea as possible, as they're just not throwing her way. And, they feed OMG the ball, and they do this, and they get into the red zone by doing this. And finally, it's a handoff to OMG here, and Klam makes a physical pull to set up a 2nd and 6 in the red zone. I think that is maybe the only in-game interaction they had, I want to say, at least with Ashlea on the defensive side of the ball there. And so, she holds it down. Great pull here, 2nd and 6. That stops a little bit of the momentum. Following that, she plays fantastic man-to-man coverage in the slot to bring up 3rd and 13. That forces a sack there. Ashlea Klam, her man-to-man skills, it really shines in this rep right here on their 7th drive here. So now 3rd and 13. Kaiser does the right thing. They stay in his zone despite a stacked wide receiver look here, which is good because Warner has been able to trick Kaiser into playing in man in this look before. And they go ahead and they get a nice stop here in zone. That brings up 4th and 9. Great coverage in zone. And then they go ahead and run it again. Great coverage in zone. Ashlea accelerates the pass and contests a look here. This is just great coverage across the board here in zone here. And it does allow Ashlea to go make a play. I don't know if this pass would have been caught, but still her going to contest it, that's just good discipline right there, and that allows them to give Kaiser the ball back here with a huge stop there. So hey, look, zone works in the red zone. You should probably keep that. Here we go. Let's go to our last drive of the game here, last defensive drive for Kaiser of the game, or at least one that matters. Klam almost misses Jessica Finley on a post route. I think she's playing a zone here, and she is just able to go ahead and get a pull and also cover the pitch to stop them from scoring. So that is a lapse for sure in performance here in an otherwise elite, top tier performance. Still stops them from scoring. They're still right here, and they're in a spot to still stop them. But honestly, she just got caught flat-footed. I don't think she was ready for that acceleration, and it happens, right? So that brings up 2nd and 7 and Kaiser goes to man. Warner sets up a great play away from Kaiser and Ashlea Klam, who is in man. And they throw an out route, a great out route. In fact, an out route that has become their go-to, an out route that has been their bread and butter. And Warner takes the lead. There is nothing they could have done here for this to be okay. Once they went to man, it was horrible. I mean, Ashlea, I will say this, she was playing in her zone, right? So it was like cover one man, I should say that. But unless Ashlea just full on commits to this out route, like pre-snap commits to it, that like and breaks hard to this out route, and then potentially leave somebody else open without help, I don't think there was any way they were going to stop this. I think this was just the wrong defense to call for your Kaiser. And I don't know if there's anything that Ashlea could have done to stop this, like I said, unless she just reads it all the way through and gambles that Hutchinson is going to throw this no matter what here. But like I said, just playing in man pulls Ashlea Klam away because now, she has to be over the middle, right? She has to be over there. And, there's nothing they could do. I think if it was a zone, it would have helped defend against that out route a lot better. And, yeah. So it is what it is there. I think it was definitely the wrong call to make in the red zone, and that really hurt Kaiser. I think there's no reason for them to be in man. It was obviously man because the outside receiver took the outside corner away, and then it was just a slot out route, and the corner got beat in one-on-one against a great receiver, and, that's how they get you. And even though Kaiser has played Warner 4 times in a month, allowed them to get you. And I will say this is probably not the only reason why Kaiser lost the national championship, but it's one of the main reasons why. The other one lies on the offensive side of the ball, which we'll talk about when talking about Ava Wallace here. But, just looking at this game as a whole and watching Ashlea Klam play and evaluating her national championship performance, look, this is the summary. When they went into man, they scored because Ashlea was too far away from the ball to go make a play. When you are moving your best defensive playmaker schematically away from the ball, it is really hard to win games and really hard to put her in positions to go erase a play and go get a stop. Like I said, there was technically cover one. It looked like cover one zone here. Ashlea being in the zone A1 in man here. And she might have been able to prevent the late touchdown, but that's only if she went all out in covering that one out route. That would have left stuff over the middle. That would have left open probably another out route on the other side there. I think just being a man in general in the red zone right here against this team with receivers who all have double-digit touchdowns on the year is just a massive failure. And it's just a massive mistake. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know why they would do that. I think at best, if they're going to run this out route look, you play a zone, you take away the look, hope your rush gets there, right? You gotta push Warner away from going towards those out route type of looks here. Let OMG run the ball, and you come up and make those pulls, right? But what you cannot do is let them get to their bread and butter, and that is what they allowed them to do here. And there just wasn't anything Ashlea could do. On the other offensive touchdowns, Ashlea was just so far, it felt like she was just so far out of the play because she was playing in man and they wanted to play in man that, I don't know, it is what it is. There was nothing she could have done on that first touchdown that Warner scored to tie the game because she was just taken so far out of it by her own coaching staff that it is what it is. And then, like I said, don't even get me started with her at receiver. I felt like they didn't involve her enough, especially on deeper looks here. Now, trust me, I get it. It's a tough defense. We're going to talk about that tough defense when talking about Ava Wallace's film breakdown. But when you have a playmaker, you got to give her the ball. You got to design a little bit more for her to allow her to go make big plays to help you win games. And I just felt like they did not do enough to get her the ball in the red zone, or did not give her, good enough looks to get involved in the red zone at all. This Warner defense, to their credit, did their homework, and they blanketed her. And Kaiser did not know how to react to that, obviously, as she had, 3 receptions against them in this game, 2 receptions in the game before. She did have 7 receptions against them about a month before, and then, I think we're missing a game. And then, that's about it right there. But I don't know. Just not nearly involved as much as you want here. Not nearly as involved as you want here. And that ends up, it hurts them. They're not able to win. They lose by a touchdown. And that's how close these margins are. But altogether, you can't pin this game on Ashlea Klam. Ashlea Klam played a great game. How many times did I say in this film breakdown of the national championship, Warner decided not to test her deep. They didn't test her deep. A lot of short plays. Now they got to punt it. Now they got to punt it. Now they got to punt it. The only times Kaiser was able to score, Warner was able to score on Kaiser was when they were in man. And I kind of feel like you would have figured out that zone worked a little bit sooner than later. And if you get beat in zone, hey, whatever. It is what it is, right? But at least you're not giving them a wide open look in man. And like I said, I need to chill out here because I feel like I'm just bashing on the decisions of the Kaiser coaching staff more than anything. But I just felt like there wasn't anything better she could have done here. There just wasn't. I think she played as great of a game as she could. I think she very much affected the game plan of Warner. You got to look at this Warner team. This is a Warner team that hammered records all over the country, in all offensive, statistics, right? Most passing yards, most passing touchdowns, most, I want to say maybe most receptions. That might be one to look up, but most receiving yards, most receiving touchdowns, most players with receiving, over 1,000 receiving yards, most players with over 10 touchdowns, right? Most touchdowns in a game. This is a very productive offense that was a buzzsaw through everyone else. And so for an elite generational player like Ashlea Klam to go into this game and at the end of the day, her defense and herself being part of that unit only allowed 2 touchdowns, and both of those realistically were preventable if you just stuck to what you were doing most of the game, then, that's as good as a national championship effort as you can get. That's just as good as it gets. And they could not make the most out of it, unfortunately. But I thought she played great here, and she's due for a national championship. Now being at Cal Poly, it's gonna be different, obviously, there for sure. I don't think they're gonna have a national championship by the time she is able to play, because I think she only has a year of eligibility. I could be wrong. I know that has looked different from NAIA to NCAA, so we'll see what's up with that. But Ashlea Klam, I think really the only thing missing in her career is a national championship, but it's not because she wasn't able to play at a national championship level. This defensive performance, in my opinion, was national championship level. This is the type of performance that you need out of an elite safety. This is what an elite safety game looks like. So if you're a safety out there, I would definitely recommend watching this national championship of Ashlea Klam because she locks it up. She wasn't getting the touches she needed on offense. That's fine. She made it. She found a way to get it done on defense and keep this game competitive. And they almost won it too, up to the end. And she left it all out on the field, and you gotta respect that. You gotta respect that. I felt like she played such a clean game here on the defensive side. And like I said, I view her as more of an offensive player, and that just is a testament to the greatness that is Ashlea Klam. All right, now that'll kind of wrap up her film breakdown right there. I mean, she is legitimately one of the best two-way players in the entire country, and I just told you why. It has been something that most people have known, right? But a little reminder every now and then never hurts, and I think pulling from this last game really showed you what she can do for a program, for a team. Now, I guess let's talk about the future, the outlook, what's next. So, 3 years done at Kaiser. She has transferred to Cal Poly here. I believe she only has 1 year of eligibility left. I know, there's some things when it comes from NAIA to NCAA that are a little bit different, but I'm pretty sure it's 1 year of eligibility left here for her. And then, obviously she's going to be competing on the international level, has been doing that. Really, her career is as complete as you could get from a football player standpoint here. Obviously, you want a national title, but you've won conference titles, right? I think the next step for her would be winning the gold at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. I think that's the next thing up for her. And then, going pro. I know the NFL, came out with something like a year ago talking about supporting a men's and women's professional flag football league. If Ashlea Klam was to go that route, I think she would be a very successful pro here. I think her prime years are ahead of her, and, she's somebody that could play both ways and is worth, a lot of investment money in, because she is big time. She makes big time plays. She is prime time. She's there when you need her, on top of just being an excellent person and role model for all these athletes and younger kids in general who are aspiring to reach the levels of an Ashlea Klam. She's a great person, and she's somebody that, you want representing your professional league, right? You want someone representing your franchise. And I think she's somebody that has a very bright future in the sport, still bright, and there's a bunch of different ways you could go about it. But with that being said, when you look back at the greats of women's college football, Ashlea Klam has cemented herself there, championship or not. That is how great of a player she is. She has had her moments. She has stepped up, and she's played at as high a level as you could hope for. And, that's awesome to see from one Texas native to another, just seeing somebody like Ashlea Klam play at such a high level. That's inspiring, right? And it's inspired a whole state. And like I said, this is why we have to have flag football become sanctioned in Texas. It's going to give more opportunities to players, to great natural athletes like Ashlea, to take on a new sport or hobby and make a name for themselves out here, because that's exactly what Ashlea has done on this level. Make a name for herself, and she is not done. There is still more of a name to be made. There is still more things to check off, and, I'm excited for her. It has been a true honor, and I'm saying this like it's the last time I'll ever be able to cover her, but it's not. But so far, it's been a true honor being able to cover her collegiate career. She has lived up to the hype and more, and there are very few athletes who have done that, when it comes to covering them and, seeing them play as a young teenager to now, a college athlete, an adult, and somebody who has really come into their own and has proven that they are truly an elite player. And because of that, has opened a door for so many other young athletes to walk in her footsteps. And like I said, not just walk in those footsteps, but be able to build on the foundation that she laid down for Texas flag football players, for women's flag football players, for girls flag football players, for girls football players in general, right? And so she will be remembered as that, and the film does not lie. It reflects her greatness. So There you go there. That is Ashlea Klam out of Texas, formerly of Texas Fury, formerly of the Kaiser Seahawks, now over at Cal Poly, and of course part of Team USA. Obviously, we'll be rooting for her. Well, for sure, we'll be rooting for her at the LA Olympics. We'll absolutely love to be able to cover her games there if we get the opportunity. And obviously, that invitation to interview with us. I know we've done a post-game interview, but the invitation to interview with us is always open. We'd love to have Ashlea on and reminisce a little bit about the college days and talk a little bit more about her story and, talk about her efforts as well, because she has done a lot to help sanction Texas girls flag football and is super passionate about it. We'd love to have her on to talk about that and what people could do to continue to help with that, and of course her story along the way. If you don't know her story, you should. I know there's been a million other podcasts and, interviewees and people who have interviewed her that have been able to tell her story, but it's a great story. It's, like I said, about a great athlete who is also a great person and has worked hard for everything and deserves all the good things ahead of her and more. So there you go there. That is Ashlea Klam. Alrighty, now the second half of this episode, we are going to be talking about her longtime quarterback out of Rouse High School here in Leander, Texas, Ava Wallace, the freshman quarterback, the phenom who played for them this last year, her freshman year, but was with Texas Fury for a very long time, was their quarterback that has seen them through so much success in that club's history. I mean, part of the greatness of Texas Fury is the greatness of Ava Wallace. A proven winner, she won the inaugural Maxwell Football Club High School Girls National Player of the Year Award. I know and by the way, I'm just going off of what I see on her Kaiser website, or Kaiser bio. But in 2024, led Texas Fury to a 49-13 record with 6,000 yards and 101 touchdowns. Has passed for over 30,000 yards in her time with Texas Fury and 522 touchdowns. As I know, she's been playing with them for an extremely long time, since I'm pretty sure she's a kid. And then also won 2 gold medals during her time with USA Football's 17U U.S. Girls National Flag team there in 2022-2023. And then obviously, I think you probably have seen her, if you've been around flag and whatnot, you've seen her play in those NFL flag circuits and a million other tournaments as well, as she got her start in the 5s level, just like Ashlea Klam. And, hailing from Texas as well, one of the, at least for me, I'd probably say notable female Texas quarterbacks to be on the come up here, starting with girls flag football and then now playing college flag football as well. How lucky are we to be able to talk about Ava Wallace and some of these great accomplishments. On top of that, I want to highlight this as well, a big advocate for mental health. I want to go ahead and shout out the Clocks Running podcast, season 3, episode 16. They released a great interview with Ava Wallace just about a month ago on the 27th of May. She kind of talks about a lot that happened and her experience with her mental health battles and how she continues to approach that as she is entering a different chapter of her life, truthfully. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that. A lot of great things there, and absolutely love what she stands for. And I mean, hey, just another great athlete on and off the field that we get to highlight here and talk about, because, flag football, she has done so much for this sport here as far as opening doors for players in Texas who have the same passions as her, and has contributed so much as well. And so on this episode, I'm really excited to be able to finally just break down her film. Like I said, I've been able to watch her play flag football for a minute here. When I was looking to be a GA for Midland, I also got to watch her play on the club level. I remember watching her play against Staten Island Giants, and I was like, oh my god, like she could sling it. And I love the passion that all of them play with. It's a Texas Fury thing, right? And so that's obviously something that stood out to me for sure, but there are obviously other things that has been able to stand out. And so basically, let's get into our film breakdown first here. Let's get into the film breakdown before we talk about the national championship, because I think there are a lot of factors that played a role in that national championship. But I was able to watch a lot of her film from her freshman year in college. And mind you, she's going from the fives game where, I mean, she's played most of her games, I think, career-wise. If you were to ask her, like, have you played more 5v5 flag than sevens? The answer should definitely be more 5v5. And she's come from that background, and this was her first year playing 7-on-7 on the collegiate level, and it's different. You know, there are some growing pains, obviously. There are some things that translated extremely well, and then there are some things that just needs time, right? And, you know, she really tackled that challenge on head on this year for Kaiser, and, you know, there, admittedly, I will put this out there, was a lot of pressure going into this role for Kaiser. Kaiser's a winning program. This is a team that, you know, showed that they could win with Jasmine Roden, then showed that they could win with a one-year starter in Haley Young, and, you know, was shown that this is a very, very productive offensive program. A strong history of quarterbacks, a strong history of wide receivers, including the one she grew up with, Ashlea Klam. She's thrown 1 million touchdowns to her. There's a proven connection right there. I mean, going into this, you know, this is a program that expects to win right away. And not just win, they expect to contend and win national championships. That is the burden that you take on when you go to Kaiser. And, you know, to her credit, she took that willingly. You know, she wanted to go compete, right? No Haley Young over there, no Jasmine Roden, obviously, but you have a great quarterback in Adrian Rivera, a fellow freshman from Florida, who is a little bit more of a dual threat that was over there. They also recruited Keelan Coleman, a transfer from Thomas, a proven winner in this Sun Conference, by the way. It's come in, even though she had to sit for the year anyways. And so, you know, there's going to be a lot of competition at this quarterback position right off the bat. And on top of that, you know, a lot of pressure to go win right away. And so there's a lot kind of riding on this, but at the same time, there is a reason that there are all these pressures. It's because Ava Wallace, in my opinion, was one of the top freshman quarterbacks in her class. And this is a stacked quarterback class, by the way. When you, like, I guess, take a step back and look at this quarterback, you got Amaya Pablo, who killed it in Florida, put up numbers at Lindsey Wilson as a freshman as well, broke in-game records. You know, you got a Sailor Swanson from here in Colorado. She did her thing, playing well, and then went over to Wingate and played well against Ottawa, and I felt like at times against Kaiser too and Reinhardt. You got Gianna Reyes of St. Francis. You have Annalie Morales. You have Sophia Wright. Like, you have so many. There are so many great quarterbacks, right, who were coming out of this class. But I think Ava Wallace was the most notable. I will say this. Even though she was the most notable, we didn't put her on our all-freshman list. It wasn't disrespect or anything. I think we weren't sure if Keelan Coleman was going to be able to play or not. And if she was going to be able to play, it's hard to look at an experienced winner and starter and not, you know, see them as the favorite to win. And then it was confirmed that they would actually run the NAIA eligibility rules with her, and so she would lose, or she would have to sit a year for that. And so that kind of opened the door for Ava Wallace, but that is also the reason why we didn't put her on our all-freshman team, because we weren't sure if she was going to get that fair of an opportunity, even though she could play on other teams. So just clearing the air right there, in case you take a look back and was like, you didn't believe in Ava Wallace. I did. I am arguably the most biased towards Ava Wallace on the podcast, being from Texas and loving, you know, my Texas football players and athletes over here and rooting for them. I knew what she could do, and I think she proved to the rest of the world, at least to the rest of the collegiate flag football world, what she could do. I think if you follow flag football, you kind of know what she's all about anyways. But, you know, let's talk about it. So I was able to watch a lot of her games. Notably, I watched the national championship. So there's that. I also watched a lot of that postseason Sun Conference, the tournament itself as well. Went back and looked at some games, looked at that Kansas Wesleyan game before. I watched her against Ottawa in the Not in the national championship, but earlier on in the season, I watched a couple of those games as well. And then obviously there's some not close games that I was able to kind of take a look at as well when doing her film evaluation. I watched a little bit of Lise McRae, watched a little bit of, I want to say it was St. Thomas? Could be wrong. Want to say it was St. Thomas, but like I said, really basing a lot of this off of, some of the postseason stuff, the more recent stuff I was able to watch. So let's go ahead and hop right into it. Let's start with her strengths, the things that really separates her from other quarterbacks and players in the country. I think the number one strength, which is super apparent, is just her processing ability and her IQ. She is a fast processor whose extensive background in 5v5 flag has supported this. 7-on-7 is I feel like, is a much slower game for her, and it allows her to potentially get greedy, but she does a good job at knowing what the team needs and getting it most of the time, I would say. She's very mindful and situationally aware. I think for somebody who is playing sevens for not the first time, but for the first full season here, she's very mature in the way she plays, right? It's rare that she's going to force the ball a whole bunch. She knows what she needs to get. She knows, defenses. I think she reads them really well. I think her pre-snap ability is next level. I think it's just one of those things where you have quarterbacks who are students of the game, they'll study it a whole bunch, and it's that hard work that really separates them. For Ava Wallace, I'm sure she does the same thing, but it's almost to a secondary level where, some of it is just second nature almost. And it's partially because she's been playing the sport for so long, and she's seen different coverages and different things that some teams will try to disguise in 5s, and in 7s it looks a little bit different, but there are some similarities, and I think it shows. She knows where to go with the football most of the time. It's rare that she's just rattled and just freezes up and is not able to make a play, but I just think her processing ability is elite. She ain't no rook, that's for sure. Now, the other thing I really like is her arm talent, specifically her ability to throw off platform. I think is something that really separates her from other quarterbacks. She just does such a good job throwing under pressure. Is extremely comfortable doing this, and like I said, a lot of it comes from her background in 5s. She has a very strong base when she throws and can rip some tough throws into tough windows when she decides to anchor down and really let it go. I think she has the mechanics to make some great layered passes over the middle, on the money, on time, short and medium. I think the medium range throws, those real tough throws that you could squeeze in between some defenders and whatnot that you can only make through great timing and angles and all that stuff. Those are the type of throws that she is more than capable of making, and those are hard throws, but she has shown that she can be capable of anticipating those and making those on a consistent basis. I've seen her do it. There's one play in particular when I was looking through film where I think it was her game against Ottawa, and it's raining, so this ball is a little slick, right? So timing might be a little bit off here, but she automatically recognizes the defense. How I know this? It's because there's a big old hole in the middle of this Ottawa defense, which is open for a split second. It's not open for longer than that or shorter than that or anything. It's open for a split second. Ava has a rusher in her face, and if you know anything about these Ottawa rushers, they're going to go get you, right? They're a physical group, and, they're a very smart group. They're going to try to rattle you. They're trying to rattle her, and she just lets this ball go. And the receiver hasn't cleared into this opening. She's throwing her into an open space. It's a post route, I think, to Tramisha Harris running from left to right, and she just puts it right on the money. The safety, she sees it, but it's just thrown so perfectly that, there's just nothing you could do. And by the time the receiver's turning into this open area and showing late hands, the DB is reacting way too late to this. And so that is a prime example at just being elite at throwing those layered type of passes here. And then, like I said, on top of that, just one of the more accurate throwers of the footballs I've seen. Like I said, she could throw it when set. When she's on the run, she throws pretty accurately, on a consistent basis, even though she doesn't have a set base here, and can really thread the needle on a lot of these short to medium passes here and truly take apart a defense who, may be covering a receiver well, but, it's just one of those passes that only Ava Wallace could fit in. And that is something that really separates her from other quarterbacks. Just that arm talent, the ability to work the short, the medium, to really not lose accuracy, even though she has someone in her face, even though she's like backpedaling or rolling or whatever, like off platform, she'll make the throw if there's a window there. That is how talented she is. And, it's just one of those things where, there are quarterbacks that work hard at this thing, and then there are quarterbacks that work hard at this thing, and, it comes to them naturally. Some of it is just natural talent. It's hard to replicate some of that. And then last but not least, something I want to really touch on is that, she is a pretty decent athlete. I'm not going to say sneaky athleticism. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But she's definitely mobile enough to extend plays. And she's very smart in how she uses her athleticism. Like I said, she's obviously an athlete. She could move around. She could make people miss. She has that little quarter spin in her back pocket, which is a very fives quarterbacks of her to have that, but she's able to evade a rush and buy some time. And on top of that, of buying time, like, you also kind of got to look out for her to run. You can't just give her 10 or 15 yards of open space, because she will take that and then throw a dot on you, right? And so she has the right athleticism to really keep you on your toes, and it's what it makes her difficult to bring down too, because I think she'll always look to pass first, or at least I think she will always look to pass first then run. And so just that extra elusivity that makes it really annoying when playing a quarterback like this, who not only gets it out quick and is decisive because of her pre-snap reads, but also if she needs an extra second, she can buy it and just beat you in a one-on-one situation. That's another thing that separates her from other quarterbacks around the country. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and talk about some area of improvements here. I will say this. It was very noticeable that she threw more picks near the end of the season now. I got to shout out that podcast again that she was able to do an interview with the Clocks Running podcast, but she did mention that she is recovering from a shoulder injury for, it seems like, the next couple months. So obviously it was a big enough deal then that must have happened sometime in the postseason. But to me, it was definitely something that when you compare her film from the beginning of the year to some of her games at the end, you could see some of that shoulder injury, holding her back. But even then, I do feel like, because of the shoulder injury, that her accuracy, especially when trying to throw deep, it wasn't always the best. I think her short and medium, there's no doubt about how good it is, right, and how good it can be. Her deep balls, it can be good, but I think that's definitely something she wants to probably improve on. Playing on a bigger field, a wider field, there's going to be more opportunities for big plays. And fives, I don't know if you're really throwing it deep like that, especially with how fast the game is. And so I think for her to take the next step as a 7-on-7 quarterback, it just means developing that deep ball a little bit more, getting consistent with the timing there, with, the height, with the, velocity you want to throw off of, especially when you're throwing on the run as well. That could get a little tricky too, and so I think that's something that, she can definitely develop into a great deep ball thrower. Was she as good as one as she could have been last year? No, I think that's definitely something, if you're going to point at a thing that she could improve on, that's probably a realistic thing to look at and be like, yeah, maybe she didn't release it as effortlessly as some other quarterbacks that we've seen play before. Like, I think about Mackenzie Hicks over at Lisa McRae, only a year older, the way she's able to just flip her hips and flick the wrist forward, and that ball just flies that's something that some people naturally have. I think with Ava Wallace, it's something that she could definitely develop into a consistent part of her game. And so I do think the accuracy deep did play a role in some of those picks. And then the other thing was those that injury that happened to her shoulder. I think it's hard to adjust to, and I can't even imagine, having played quarterback, I can't even imagine playing with a shoulder injury and knowing that you can make some of these throws downfield before. But with the injury like this, a shoulder injury, I don't know if that's necessarily realistic. And you're still going to try it because it's open and you see it. But, you live with those consequences, and it is what it is. And so that's a very unfortunate that happened here. But I think regardless, even before then, would love to see her continue to work on that accuracy and timing on some of those deep throws. Because I really do think she can outthrow a coverage. If she could outthrow a coverage, that would take her game to the next level. So there you go. Another thing that I think is a key area of improvement here, but I think there are times where she is maybe too focused on getting the ball out quick or staying on tempo, and sometimes she misses out on some bigger plays downfield. I will say some of that is on the Kaiser system, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit here. But I think there are times where, hey, you don't need to get the ball out this quick. It's not fives, right? You could be a little bit more greedy. You could look for some deep stuff. But in turn, I will say this, when her team is down or the game is closer, I feel like she feels like she needs to force some passes downfield a little bit deeper, a little bit too often, and it results in some bad turnovers. I think there's some plays that she feels like she can see happening in her head, and she can envision how it all goes down, and she tries to force it, and it's just not quite there. And it takes a hard mental reset in game or a timeout to snap her back into reality and focus on making the right play rather than forcing something deep. And now I think a lot of that is just being a younger quarterback playing sevens. I think she is smart enough to see all the possibilities, but because of that could be overwhelming as far as decision making gets. And so I think finding that decisiveness really only comes with experience in sevens, right? I think there are times where, the tempo may seem a little bit off, where you're going fast when you could be going a little bit slower and maybe looking for some deeper looks here. And then there are times where, like, hey, throwing it deep right here on an early down is just not it. Even though you may need it, and because of all the football experience you have, that you need a big play eventually on this drive, that's something that's stuck in the back of your head and maybe just becomes a bigger voice as time goes on. You may know that, but that doesn't mean you should do it. And I think there are times where she just felt like, hey, maybe if I could look off this safety, or maybe if, my receiver can win this route right here, I can squeeze it into this opening that she's obviously anticipating. And most of the time when I'm watching her throw, I'm watching her throw some of these interceptions or turnovers, it's like, I see where you're coming from, right? But either it's, you should have taken an extra second to see where the defense shifts, or, you should have taken what's there. And I think these are just very minor inconsistencies that happen. It hasn't happened enough where it's like, hey, this is a massive issue, but it is something that, I know she's a perfectionist over there. I could tell that she wants to fix in her game, and I think that's just something that you fix through experience. Sevens is different from fives. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap for sure, right? But I think the tempo, the minute details, the details that, separate a good game, a great game from a perfect game, I mean, it lies in those small details. It lies in the timing. It lies in waiting. It lies in being patient. And, being a young quarterback, you are going to get aggressive, overly aggressive, especially when you're this talented. It's going to happen, right? But part of growing and becoming a better player, and I guess a better person as well, there's some really ties into life, is accepting those shortcomings and being like, okay, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to be, and this is what I can do right now to get there, or at least progress there. And trust me, the progression is there. When you really, really look at the stats, right? And I'll go over the stats right now. I have them pulled up right here. At the end of the season, 5,690 passing yards. Whoops, sorry. Just, gosh dang it. 79 passing touchdowns, and then did throw 23 interceptions. 23 is a little high, right? But, when you are a confident quarterback and you are playing in-game, what matters is winning, right? If the interceptions pile up, it is what it is. You learn from there. But a lot of those interceptions did come in the second half here, and it is worth putting that in context that she threw 7 interceptions against Warner, who she played 3 times. The only other team that she threw multiple picks against in that last month was Kansas Wesleyan. Or at least, it's listed as Kansas Wesleyan, but she would wake up very quickly from that game. And watching that game, going from, at least I hope I'm thinking of the right game, going from just a very sloppy performance to turning it around, that shows the mental toughness and the growth there for sure. But when you look at it, she's really only just struggling against a Warner team who seemingly has her number. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in the national championship because, numbers could be deceiving for sure. Other than that, the numbers look pretty good for the season. She's shown that she can be extremely productive. It is hard to live up to expectations sometimes, and I feel like she exceeded them as a true freshman. She's the first quarterback, in Kaiser history who, was not on the roster the year before, outside of Jasmine Roden, right? But she was the first whatever. She was the first quarterback in years to hop into the system without a quarterback that was not already on the roster. Haley Young at least got to learn from Jasmine Roden, right? Jasmine Roden, she had multiple years of experience before that and then was a multi-year starter for Kaiser. And so for Ava Wallace to hop into this role, to take this challenge, it's inspiring. It's awesome to see because not only did she take on the challenge, but I thought she gave it as good a go as anybody could have. I don't know if there's another quarterback, like freshman quarterback, that would have delivered the same way as Ava Wallace, down the stretch especially. So there you go. But you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about that national championship. That was the last game she played with. A couple things to keep in mind. It was the either third or fourth time they played Warner in a month here. I think the second time they would play them, I think they played them literally the day before as well. And, these are both teams that are comfortable with each other, that know what each other brings to the table. And so, the big plays and whatnot are going to be very far and in between. You got to play a clean football game as a quarterback, even though it may not look the most productive from a numbers standpoint. You got to play a clean game against an opponent like this if you really, really, really want to win and win a national championship. And so let's go ahead and hop into this game. This is arguably the biggest game of her career, and I think this one showed a lot about what she is made of here, in my opinion. And so let's start with drive number 1 for her. Number 1 takes a really bad sack from her former club teammate, Lauren Clark, and that kind of sets them back to start this drive. It looked like she had a receiver, but for some reason just didn't pull it, and it could just be nerves early on. But hey, it doesn't matter because on the next play, she flexes that arm talent I was talking about, rolls out right, finds Sophia Caprio, who breaks free on a great play, and then on the next one, there was a beauty of a corner out to Dakota Moberg after a tough penalty, and that goes ahead and puts them in the red zone. So boom, first down to start after a sack, and then boom, a big splash play to go ahead and put them in the red zone. Mind you, this is a team they are familiar with. This is a team that they know they got to beat twice to become national champs here. So big plays like this, far and in between, to go ahead and get aggressive here and set the tone right away with flexing a little bit of that arm talent and letting your receivers go get the ball. Big time. They're in the red zone here off some great plays. Once in the red zone, she makes a great pre-snap read here, recognizing the coverage, it's man-to-man, and throws a nice ball to Ashlea Klam here on, it looks like an out route. It's a little high, but I think you got to anticipate that a Warner defender would recover and potentially contest this one, so I don't mind it being high. It's not like way too high at all. I mean, Ashlea can jump out the gym, so she brings it in. That's a touchdown. Bing, bang, boom. Kaiser on the board just like that. That is the Ava Wallace effect here, and just a great first drive to start. Now the PAT, I think it was the right read but the wrong pass. She does track down the defender to prevent the score here because it was picked off here. She made the right read. I think the pass was just not as tight as spiral or as hard to throw as maybe she thought it would be, and that's, if we were talking about injury, that'll happen with a shoulder injury, right? And so it is picked off. The timing is thrown off a little bit, but she does bring them down, so it doesn't matter. They still go up 6-0, and I think points of any kind that you could get do matter here, and they do respond right away with points. And so even though they don't get the PAT, a touchdown's a touchdown. And so here we go. Let's go ahead and go to drive number 2 here. Fast forward to play, maybe second down here. I don't think she expects both rushers for some reason, and she has open players over the middle, but she kind of tries to roll out before checking it down. That's incomplete and kind of a missed opportunity. I don't know. I think they just disguised it well because they were rushing one for a lot of the last game and really for the rest of this game too, so they kind of just caught her off guard, and so what probably should have been a plus in yards ended up just being 0, so that brings up third, where they're near midfield here, and Wallace does find Caprio on a quick drag route, nice sidearm throw to get them out of that situation, and that would end up giving them a first down pass in midfield. She would then throw 3 quick outs. That would put them back into the red zone as she is in rhythm here. And by the way, second red zone trip of the day. And then Kaiser would run some interesting plays here. They have this play where it's definitely a direct snap to like Janasia Wilson, and then Ava Wallace pretends that it is a fake snap over her head. And so I am just watching her as Ava Wallace fakes the snap going over her head twice as they spam this play for an overall gain of 0 yards. I don't know about calling it a second time when it didn't work the first time, but it's what they do. To make things worse is that for Kaiser, they kind of stay in this formation, that, very like tight formation where everyone's shoulder to shoulder on the line next to the center, the same look that, they use trying to get to Janasia Wilson, and they attempt a rollout here, and Wallace has to let this one go, trying to find Ashlea Klam in the corner of the end zone, but like, this is just well covered. Like, there's really nowhere else to go, especially because she already started rolling out. So unless she throws cross body, the left side of the field is closed off, or at least mentally, if you're a quarterback, it should be closed off as she's rolling out right here. And she just has to let this one go to Ashlea Klam, and this ends up being an excellent interception by Andrea Castillo of Warner. And it's just not a great look here, because I replayed this play a couple times here, and honestly, I don't think there's really anywhere else to go. It looks like a designed rollout here, but even if Andrea Castillo, because she kind of undercuts this one, even if she didn't get the pick and didn't high point this pick by undercutting it, it still would have been a contested catch by Klam, because you do see a Warner DB kind of clamp down on her hip maybe a half second after that throw is thrown there. And so it would have been contested either way. Warner, in my opinion, was obviously ready for this because that contested look was the most open look on this play. I don't think there was anywhere else she could have went that wouldn't have been an incompletion or a turnover. That's how well covered this was. It was interesting. Kaiser dropped back 2 to block, which is weird on a short play where she's already rolling out. And so you're taking away receiving options, plus she's rolling out, so half the field is not really an option unless she really risks it here. And so this immediately puts Kaiser in a numbers disadvantage backed up in the red zone. You got 6 defenders covering 4 players. And like I said, I don't know if the rollout was necessary, but it seemed like it was part of the play. And, it just takes away so much of the field. Personally, I think this is just the wrong play call to call, especially when you run 2 failed plays out of the same formation. This is a team that you played 3 times already. Why would you not consider that this is a play that they've studied over and over again out of this same formation? Why would you not try a different formation? Because obviously, they've played you 3 times, including literally yesterday. So if you at any point ran that same running back sneak into this little rollout that they did, they would have had it on film. And they would have known how to defend it by playing in this zone here, this match zone. And that's exactly what they did. And so unless Wallace just throws the most perfect throw, which I don't know where she could have possibly released it here. She would have, it would have been an insane play here. And then Ashlea would have had to make a contested catch on top of the perfect throw. I don't know how this play would have been anything other than a pick, because she wasn't going to outrun this defense for a touchdown. They were too far out. I think it's just the wrong play to call here if you're Kaiser. And, she has to throw it, because I think you'd rather run the possibility that it's caught than just hold on to it and try to run it in, or, run around and maybe somebody flashes open, right? And then you lose a bunch of yards. But it's just kind of one of those things where, there was literally nowhere else to go that would have been a better spot for this ball to be complete. I think it would have definitely been a pick 6 if she threw it anywhere else. So there you go. So tough way to go on drive 2, because that could have put them up by 2 scores, mind you. So keep that in mind. Now, drive 3, they get a great return to go ahead and get them started. So some really good field positioning that starts them in the red zone here. Once again, a couple of short passes. We're looking at a lot of out routes to Wilson, to Caprio, right? So think along those lines here. Eventually, Wallace, she's in a position, she's patient, she goes through all the reads. This is a great play right here where she comes back to Ashlea Klam and throws it to her after going through all the reads. Klam spins out of a defender and almost gets into the red zone, but is stopped short. So now it's 3rd down and manageable here. They go ahead and spread it out, which I like. Use the spacing here and, try to get somebody open and let Ava Wallace just rifle one in here. And I want to say this is 3rd down here, and here's how it goes down. She gets a snap. Like I said, it's spread out. It looks like she really wants to rifle this one into the early window of Ashlea's, I want to say it's a quarter route here, but she pulls the ball back slightly when she sees Lauren Clark underneath kind of step to it. And so the ball ends up becoming incomplete because she looks like she's about to throw it, and then she stops it from throwing it because it's about to be an interception if she lets this one go. And so the ball does fall out of her hands. That's incomplete. That's a real unfortunate mistake there, because you maybe could have gone into a 2nd or 3rd read there. But that's just also a great play by Lauren Clark to go ahead and disrupt that by dropping into that passing lane and taking away that early look. And that's tough because I think Lauren Clark dropping back, if Ava threw the underneath route from that Ashlea Klam corner, underneath that Ashlea Klam corner, then there could have been a look there. But because of where Lauren Clark was wedged, it kind of messed with the timing. And so this one just ends up being incomplete. So now that brings up 4th down here. And on 4th down, they're staying spread out. I love the look here. They go ahead and run it. And Ava Wallace finds Olivia Rijo on the money. A great throw. A nice timing throw over the middle in the back of the end zone. But this one is dropped. So unfortunately, yet another missed red zone opportunity to go up by 2 scores here. I thought she did a good job going through her reads, looking one way to create that space over the middle and then snapping back over the middle and delivering a good ball. But this one's just dropped. And so I probably wouldn't blame this one on Ava Wallace either. You know, you have 3 drives, you scored on the first one. The second one wasn't a good play call, in my opinion, on that last play. On this one, you had 2 good looks. I mean, you could have got, you know, the underneath route instead of dropping the ball there, but that's nitpicking. You still had a chance, and you made the most out of it on 4th down, made the right reads, made the right throw, and it still dropped. And so that's tough, and you kind of just got to live with it if you're Kaiser. And so now that brings up drive number 4. Starts with the 1st and 2 past midfield. Less than a minute left, I think, in the second quarter. Starts with a check down here to Caprio. Clock is running here, but they eventually call their second time out afterwards. They then have Wallace on the run, find Rio on the curl, who almost spins out and gets them into the red zone with about 15 seconds left, but they call another timeout here. So now it's 1st and 10 here. They then throw a long curl left to an isolated receiver who brings it in, but is stopped, making it 2nd and 3. That's where they called their last timeout with about 7 seconds left here. And, you know, Wallace looking on this play to take up the rest of the clock. They set up a look for Caprio, or at least whoever's at center, because on this red zone play, Ashlea Klam, she's lined up in the slot per usual. She gets to her spot, but immediately, like, it's like she's running a hitch, but stops halfway through and sets up as a blocker, which just sets up an opportunity for Caprio, who's at center, to run underneath her, and to trap some defenders behind Caprio here. And so it looks like it's meant for Caprio, and then Moberg, who is also kind of over the middle, kind of just runs directly over the middle, doesn't set up as a blocker. So to me, it looks like a pick route is what it is. So you kind of add more junk over the middle to set up this Caprio look to your right. So blocker set up left, Caprio going right here. But the problem with this play is that Warner was definitely ready for it. Just watch Lauren Clark on here, because the problem is that Lauren Clark drops back but does not fall far back enough with Ashlea Klam where Ashlea would have been able to block her. She's still kind of behind her here, and so Lauren is able to immediately pick up Caprio, the center, on this design play for her. This forces Ava Wallace to look off of her outside to her left receiver, who's in 1v1, but there's nowhere really to go. She's boxed into the corner by this defender, is well covered. So that makes Ava swing back towards the middle, and right where the play has become pretty much a find open space drill, because once that timing was disrupted by Lauren Clark, where she picks up Caprio instead of getting blocked by Klam and following her all the way through here, you know, it becomes like, okay, well, now we just got to find open space. It's 4th down, or it's late in the quarter. You know, this is a shot look into the end zone, even though we're like maybe 5 yards away, right? But it's a touchdown end zone look, right? And so you're looking for open space, right? Ava Wallace has swung back around to look for an open player, and literally everyone is covered except for Dakota Moberg, who is realizing that the right side of the field is extremely congested here because everyone's covered. So she kind of leaks out left here, away from the middle of the field to create space for the 3 other receivers on the side. But Wallace has already shifted focus, missing Moberg, who has leaked left here. And she is looking to check it down to a running back, Janasia Wilson, because she could feel that the blocking is breaking down and the internal clock is going off as well. And so, it is second nature for Ava Wallace to go ahead and get the ball to her check down, allow Janasia Wilson to go make a play, seeing that everyone is everyone is covered on this get into open space drill here. And also credit to Janasia Wilson, she recognizes the 4v3 defender advantage here, and so she is trying to leak out And, with all that being said, Lauren Clark leaves the receiver she was defending and comes down to blanket Janasia Wilson. And this is just a really good rotation by this Warner defense, as the only open player on the right side of the field is a Kaiser receiver in the far right corner. But because there's so many bodies on this right side of the field, it's really hard for Ava Wallace to see her over there. And so recognizing that, hey, my check down is now covered, and this is a split-second recognition by Ava Wallace, mind you. She sees that Wilson is immediately picked up by Clark again, comes back over to the left side, noticing that Moberg is not among the four on this side of the field, sees that she's drifted almost all the way to the left side of the field near the front pylon, but by this time with the rusher on top of her, just does not have enough time to set and throw. And mind you, it has to be a set and throw, because she's on the left side of the field, and you're already seeing a lot. If you're watching this play, you're already seeing a linebacker rotate over to the open Moberg. And so to fit this ball, she really has to anchor down and rifle this one in. But by the time she's able to get her feet set, Maggie Lauber's on top of her, and she gets her for a big time sack here. And Ava Wallace is frustrated, and rightfully so, because honestly, this is textbook national championship winning defense by Warner right here, who recognized her primary reads and threw off the entire timing of this play. I gotta shout out Lauren Clark. This play is what makes Lauren Clark great. Her ability to cover disrupts the first read, and then comes back down to the check down read, which buys check down read to Wilson, which buys Maggie Lauber time to go make a play and get the sack. For Wallace on this play, maybe she forces a pass here. Maybe when she sees that the original first read's not there and swings over to her ISO receiver on the left side, she kind of just throws a jump ball, but it's very much covered over there. I'm not going to lie. She's boxed in. She has no leverage at all. And then maybe when she comes back over, she sees if she can fit this ball in before Janasia Wilson, before Lauren Clark gets to Janasia Wilson. But I don't know if she's able to get, in the end zone, even if the ball gets there on time. And so really, there's just nowhere to go. This was just great defense by Warner. They rotated excellently. They took away her primary reads. They threw off the timing. And so Ava Wallace has the progression in her head, but everywhere she looks, as far as that timing is concerned and that progression is concerned, because those two are tied together, nobody is open when she is going from progression to progression with her timing, because Warner does such a good job of throwing that off at the beginning and at a key point in the check down process here, where it just becomes incomplete, it becomes a sack, right? You could say that she missed that look on the right side. She's not wide open. She's relatively covered. There's a defender within a couple yards of her, but she might have had a receiver in the far right corner. But if you're in the middle of the field and there's like 4 defenders and 3 receivers, that's a hard receiver to find all the way back down over there. And then for Lauren Clark to come down at the right time and pick up the check down right as Wallace comes back down, because her progression's not going to take her back to the corner if she was just over there, right? For Clark to come down, that puts this play in trouble. And it was extremely obvious that Warner's defense was ready for the Kaiser red zone offense at this point, because they could not have played this any better. This is textbook national championship elite defense right here, and they got him. I don't think there's anywhere else she could have went without forcing the ball here. Maybe she, rolls out and tries to find somebody open, but that would have closed off, like I said, a part of the field without making a cross-body throw here. And already with the shoulder injury, I don't think inaccurate cross-body throw is what you're looking for. And I mean, you kind of just trust that, Ava Wallace goes through her progression, but she went through her progressions and it wasn't there. That's how cleanly and well defended this one was. And so, honestly, I give this one to Warner and Lauren Clark. Honestly, this drive number 4, they had a good thing going here, but they had their number, and that was how they ended the half, and that would be a massive, massive play when it comes down to Warner eventually, winning this national championship and winning this game. And so your first half summary, first drive, you get a touchdown. That's great. Second drive, not the greatest play call at the end there. It ends up being picked, right? I don't know if there's more you could have done there. Third drive, you had an open look over the middle. It was on the money. It was dropped. Missed opportunity. Fourth drive, Warner beats you straight up. And so now let's go into the second half of this game. Mind you, there's only 8 total drives here. So we have the last 3 drives of this game. Let's start with drive number 5. This one almost starts with disaster as she overthrows Wilson. And this one lands in the arms of Lauren Clark, who drops it. That would have been a pick 6 here. Luckily, it was not. And so Ava Wallace, to her credit, does a good job bouncing back. Completes a couple of short, easy throws left. Some easy plays to just get some yards, some out routes, getting some minimum gains. Eventually, it sets up a 4th and 7 near midfield here. Warner is in a cover 2. They're only rushing 1 player. And so this is what Kaiser calls on 4th and 7, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure it's either a tied game or they're winning. But even then, I don't know if I would have went for it here on 4th and 7 near midfield. This kind of feels like a little bit of a gamble as far as play calling goes, but they go for it anyways. 4th and 7. And like I said, Warner's in a cover 2. They're only rushing 1. Kaiser, they go ahead and call this play right here. It looks like a double post look with their inside receivers. So it looks like Klam and Caprio are both running a double post with their outside receivers running a slant. You also have your running back, I think it's Wilson, who kind of leaks over the middle here. And this play is just well covered by Warner again, who, they take the post routes because, you don't want Ashlea Klam making a play. So there you go. Or Caprio. So you take that away pretty easily with your 2 safeties. And then the slants, they basically allow her to throw the slant because these are ran maybe 4 yards deep here. And Wallace, to her credit, she gets it out quickly, tries to get it to, I think it's Harris here, and let her make a play. But this coverage is just so tight. I mean, there's just no way that this was going to be a first down. And so they go ahead and they run the play. They allow the slants to be open, and then they just come down and make the play or make the pulls, and that is a turnover on downs. Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe you force it like a jump ball to Ashlea Klam here, but I just don't think this was that creative of a play against cover 2 here. And it did not really open up enough space for Tramisha Harris to go make something happen. And it wasn't a bad ball, it was right where it needed to be, a tight throw over the middle to allow her to get some rack or some yak yards. And like I said, I mean, it's just well defended. There's nothing you can do here. So that's a turnover on downs. And I don't know about that one. I'm just going to say that again. Do not know about that one. It also gives Warner the ball on the other side of the field here, so that happens. I don't know if there's much you could have done. Maybe she buys more time and rolls out and somebody gets open, but it's already 4th and 7. You don't want to lose more yards than what it is. Like, you really have to follow the play that you are given, and this play is just not a good play against cover 2, especially against a team, like I said, who you've played for, I think it's your 3rd or 4th time in a month. This is something that they would be ready for, and it just wasn't different enough. And so they play it very textbook, hey, you could have the underneath, we'll take the over, and then they stop the underneath and come up and make the pull. Simple as that. That's how that drive ends. It is what it is right there. Let's go to drive 7. Also, real quick, before we go to drive 7, they were in zone 2, so it's not like there's any receiver or corners trailing the slants on these receivers. They are literally playing their area and watching the slant come towards them, so there's that. All right, now to drive 7. They get some short throws going here. Wallace completing it on time, moving the sticks. But at this point, Warner, I mean, they would have scored, I believe. And so it is a tied game here. And so they're moving the ball, but this is what happens. They go ahead and line up in that tight formation with everyone lined up shoulder to shoulder. They have a curl out combo on each side of the formation with a post. I think it's Dakota Moberg that's running this post deep. And this is where Ava Wallace gets too greedy because then she tries to rip it to Dakota Moberg for a big play, but she unfortunately gets baited into this throw, and it is intercepted here. Jessica Finley jumps his route and makes a big-time play that would end up setting up a Warner touchdown on the other end for them to take the lead. And so, I mean, just looking at this right here, there's no need to take this post here. It's definitely covered. You could have had, I mean, almost any other throw here. You had some curls that were open, some outs that were open as well because of the spacing here. But she goes deep. It's open for a split second. Like, before she hits this, before she, like, makes her break, like, it looks like the space is open here. And so Wallace is trying to drop it in the bucket, but by the time she lets this thing go, it's just not there anymore, you know, and it's obviously one of those plays where, you know, Warner's waiting for her to go deep. They're waiting for her to go deep here, and they are, I mean, they're trying to bait her into this throw, and they successfully do it here. And I think it's just one of those things where if you're Ava Wallace, right, you are maybe feeling a little bit more pressure, right? You haven't scored since the first drive. It's been 6 drives of not being able to do too much here, and you want to go ahead and get on the board, right? You've been taking some short plays, but you know that inevitably, because it's already happened on a couple other drives, you had a 4th and 7, right? You had you had a couple red zone trips here where it was like 4th and 5 or 4th and whatever, right? And you kind of want to be in a shorter situation than a 4th and 7. You know you got to take a shot deep eventually on this drive. Did it have to happen on this play right here? No. But, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, it just gets the greed gets the best of you, right? And you kind of just got to learn from it from there. But either way, Warner scores to go up by a 7. You have drive number 8. 1 minute, 42 seconds left. You have 2 timeouts. This is, I mean, you got to score first off. Nothing happens without scoring. And then you get the PAT from there. And then things could get interesting, right? That is the game plan right now. Score, use the clock. I mean, well, you're going to use the clock anyways, but score first, take care of the football, and then focus on the PAT after that, okay? And so, here we go. This is how this drive goes. First down, she goes ahead and finds Moberg on an out route that goes for maybe 3 yards, 2 yards. For some reason, they don't call a timeout here, so they let it run. She then checks it down to Tramisha Harris. That gives them a first here. Like I said, clock is still running. They're going hurry up. They then go ahead and throw it short to Caprio. And by the way, these are all plays that are like short routes. Like, nobody really is running deep here. But they throw it to Caprio. She falls down here. No timeout by Kaiser, even though it is now at 1 minute. So they've used 40 seconds on like 2 or 3 plays to go like 10 yards. And the clock is just running and counting. And I'm screaming at this point, why is nobody calling a timeout? They go ahead and run another play, and this time it happens to be a check down to Wilson over the middle. And now as they're lining up, there's 40 seconds left. Clock is still running. They still have 2 timeouts. And eventually, Wallace finds Wilson on another check down to get them across midfield. It takes them over a minute to get across midfield. And she also gets out of bounds. And now there's only 30 seconds left. I don't think you can override your coach as a freshman quarterback. But that is a lot of clock to run off for you to just get past midfield. I think that is 26 yards in over a minute. They call a timeout here because now they're across midfield, right? But there is only 30 seconds left. It is definitely concerning here because now we're looking at a play count, and we're counting how many plays they might have left here, which is never what you want to do. You want to conserve time, especially if you're taking those short checkdowns. I get it if those are the only things open, right? But I think it's worth burning a timeout to preserve a couple more seconds and potentially two to three more plays here than just letting that clock run until you get past midfield. So tough go. But following that, Wallace finds Ashlea Klam finally, it feels like, on a quick out route for a short gain there. Like I said, I felt like they didn't really design much for Ashlea in this game, but it's neither here or there. Following that, she throws a slant to Harris over the middle. Mind you, this is mirrored on the other side as well. And then that actually forces them to burn a timeout. So really, they haven't taken any shots yet. The slant is maybe the deepest they've went on this entire drive. And so it is what it is. They call a timeout. I believe this is their first timeout. And there's 19 seconds left. It is 3rd and 7 past midfield, not even in the red zone yet. So you are almost 30 yards away from the red zone with 19 seconds left. Here are the things that could happen from here on out, okay? You have one timeout, okay? You only have 19 seconds, though. So what you can do is that you could theoretically run 3 or 4 straight plays that gets maybe 3 or 4 yards, and assuming you could get out of bounds as well, and that'll maybe take up, I don't know, let's say, we'll add in a second of 15 seconds, right? Setting up 4 seconds left, that gives you about 12 yards. You are in the red zone at this point, because it will go 3 up and then 4. And then you are basically looking at roughly like a 15 yards to go situation. At this point, downs doesn't matter because you have one play left. And it's like maybe 2nd or 3rd and 15, right? And then you, just in case you don't get out of bounds too, you call a timeout as well. So I'm keeping that all on track, right? You could get 4 really quick plays, maybe one that lingers a little bit here in case you're not able to get out of bounds in time, and maybe you get into a 2nd and 15. I'm just going mathematically by how many yards they've been getting per attempt on the first couple plays here on this drive alone, even historically in this game too, right? So that's option number 1. And then you take a shot from 15 yards out, and you take the full 4 seconds. Somebody go make a play from 15 yards out, or you have a play set up for a medium to deep type of gain here, and you have some, you have a little bit of extra room to work with. Either way, everyone's going to be mostly backed up into the end zone. Okay, so that's option number 1. You make the most out of your plays. You get at least 5 plays in 19 seconds, which is being a little bit generous if you're asking me. But 5 plays in 19 seconds, 3 seconds at most per play. Maybe you could get a good look from 15, maybe 10 yards out, assuming these have to be quick throws. And they have to be quick throws because you have to also get out of bounds, right? So it's not like you can go that much farther than 3 yards a play. Or the other option is that realistically you have 2 shots of maybe 5 to 6 seconds each, right? You set up the extra blockers, right? And you are looking for a shot over 10 yards. That sounds crazy to say, but you're looking for a gain over 10 yards. I don't want to say a shot, but you're looking for a gain over 10, right? You're looking for a little bit more of a chunk play here, and you have 2 shots to get there. Say you completed on the first one. That's the most ideal, right? 7 seconds goes off the board. You're able to call a timeout. You're in the middle of the field. Say it goes anywhere 10 to 15 yards, right? That's at a good spot here. You're probably still roughly around, so 10 to 15, 8, probably a 12 13, 12 yards away from the end zone. You have maybe 10 seconds left, and then you could take 2 shots into the end zone from 12 yards out. That's probably the best way it goes. Or you just take a shot into the end zone. You take potentially 2 shots into the end zone, and maybe have 1 second on the clock if you are able to get a completion. And maybe if you get a shot inside the 5 yards, you can run something quick from inside 5. That is assuming you get 20 plus on one of the 2 plays that you run in these 19 seconds. Mathematically, I have just went over everything that could have happened. Or, Ava Wallace throws a touchdown deep. It has to be in 1v1 on this play, and you don't have to worry about plays and timeouts after that. This is what should be going through their mind, right, throughout this whole thing. What Kaiser elects to do is one of these things. They're going to elect to go ahead and take a chunk play. Have to take a chunk play. Have to. To do that, you are looking for a 1v1 situation. Your player against mine. Your playmaker against mine. And we're going to see who can make a play. That is the best chance at getting a chunk play, a play over 10 on this one. And potentially 1 or 2 attempts that are closer to the end zone than what you would have had before, taking a bunch of short gains, right? Maybe looking at 2 attempts from inside the 10. That would be the ideal thing, right? And you can make something work from there as that possibility goes up. And so Kaiser, with the 1 timeout in 19 seconds, they are looking for something deep here. Warner obviously knows all these scenarios. By the way they line up, you could probably tell what they're trying to do here. And so from left to right, this is what the play looks like. On the left side at the X receiver, you have Tramisha Harris. She runs a go. Your slot receiver, I can't see who it is, but inside of Tramisha Harris from left to right, you have a post route. Following that, you have your center, who I think is either running a check down or something short over the middle. And then you have Ashlea Klam, who's running a corner route from the slot. And then you have a deep curl here as well on the right outside. So you're looking at maybe a little bit of a smash concept on the right side here. Maybe you can find Ashlea Klam here. If she's able to take the safety help, though, then maybe you have Tramisha Harris over here alone on the left side. Not alone, but like in one-on-one, you know what I mean? And then you have 2 players that are dropping back to block for Ava. So that goes 4 plus Ava 5, and then 2 blockers. Sorry, so there's no check down over the middle. You have 2 blockers, and then you have 4 receivers going out. So that's the numbers game right there. That is the last play that they call in this game here. And so here's how it goes down. Okay? They go ahead and they run it. Ava Wallace looking right here, looking at the smash concept, makes the safety commit to the right side towards Ashlea Klam to take away that look. That leaves Tramisha Harris, a very capable receiver, one of the best in the entire country, somebody who can make that play, but she is in 1v1 versus Jessica Finley, another very capable 2-way player. And at this point, this is the look you're looking for. There's not going to be a play where she's wide open. This Warner team knows you too well, right? There's not going to be a play where she's wide open. But this is a 1v1 look here. And so Ava Wallace lets this one go in 1v1. And she puts her all in this throw. And this is also how I know that she is injured, because she swings that leg all the way around, really trying to throw her entire hip into this throw. She's trying to get it deep. This is like a 30, really realistically, I mean, if you want to throw this comfortably, this is probably a 35, 40-yard throw, because you want it to be high, so that way it's a 1v1 jump ball type of deal over, I think, a taller Jessica Finley, right? So it's about a 30, 35 yard throwish when you're getting all that considered. So she's trying to put as much as she can on it. And unfortunately, it just barely goes the 27 yards to the goal line. This ball falls short. It's behind Harris, and it is intercepted by Jessica Finley. And it's just unfortunate. That ends the game. Warner wins the national championship, and Kaiser loses. And, it was the right read. But, I mean, Ava, she just puts her all in this throw. She knows that it needs to be a higher throw, that it needs to be a true 50-50 ball. But it just kind of barely goes 27 yards and gets to the goal line, and it's just behind Tramisha Harris. And I could tell she's hurt once again because she is throwing her hips into this throw. And right as she lets it go, she reels back just a little bit, and it does not look comfortable at all for her. And like I said, unfortunately, this is the right read. But this version of Ava Wallace, who's just not healthy in this moment, is just not able to make this play. And because of that, it is an interception. And it is what this is. Now, she's more than capable of making this throw. If you look at the Ottawa game, there's a similar throw deep that she does where she's able to get, the right height on the look here and is able to get it up there and put a ball into the end zone on a 50-50 look. If you look at that game at the beginning of the year, it shows that she could make this throw. But for her to, like I said, throw her hips into this one, really just trying to get her all on this throw, it shows that she was really trying to get this ball out there, but because of the injury, it just is what it is. And so, unfortunately, that is how Kaiser loses, and that's how Ava Wallace loses her first national championship, despite, like I said, making the right read right here. I mean, when we look at the summary of these drives, she had 8 scoring drives. She had 8 offensive drives, right? None of these ended too early because of half, or she got the ball with 1 second left. So these were 8 full drives. She had 1 scoring drive at the beginning of the game when she was the most fresh, right? So you got to think about that. And then there are 2 drives after that, after that in the game, which I would consider her fault. There's that pick that she threw trying to find Moberg, which just wasn't there. She got baited into that throw, and on top of that, it was just not, the best throw either. That's picked off. And then you have the throw at the end here, which was just not a good throw. I mean, it was the right read, sure, because you are looking for a 1v1 look, but I will still be like, hey, that's kind of on you. If you can't make that throw, check this one down, right? Look for something maybe a little bit closer, and then you could take another shot in. It's not ideal, but I do think it was a little ambitious to think that she can make a lofty 30-yard pass on the money, or not on the money, but at least timing-wise, have it be there so that it could be a good 50-50 look for your receiver. It is asking for kind of a lot after the exhaustion of this game that you've just played in, and whatnot. I just kind of feel like you just got to be aware that you don't have the arm power for that if you are hurt and are in that situation. Now, as a young player, it's something that comes with experience, right? You learn that as you get older, and you learn the limits of your your physical self, right? And it is what it is, right? And then on top of that, so you had those 2 drives that were her fault. Then you had 3 empty red zone drives as well. One was picked, which, like I said, I don't know if there was anywhere else she could have went where it wouldn't have been picked, or picked 6th, to be honest with you. Another one was a drop touchdown pass by Kaiser. And then another one was just great coverage by Warner at the end of half, where there really wasn't anywhere to go there. And I don't think any other quarterback would have been able to make a play outside of just being able to outrun the Warner defense, but they were in a zone, so I don't think they would have been able to score even then. So there is that. So that's tough, You have 1 scoring drive and then 7 that just kind of don't work out here. And that does include 3 turnovers in this game. Like I said, one was an excellent play by Andrea Castillo where, I don't think it was the best Kaiser play call. The second one was a true mental mistake by Ava Wallace here where, she just got a little bit too greedy. But even then, still had a chance to win the game. And then the third one, you had to put it in the end zone. So I don't quite blame her. Maybe you could have went somewhere else as well. I don't know. That one's a hard one. I know I just said that's kind of on her, but I don't know. The more I think about it, actually, the more I go back and forth. It just wasn't a great situation. I think if we take a step back and you look at that last drive, I don't know why the Kaiser coaching staff didn't use their timeouts. I thought it was a misuse of clock management. I think you can't afford to have less time than you need out there, especially against a team like this that knows you, right? Maybe you want to value that last timeout at the end, but I think you could have afforded a timeout on your side of the field when you're taking all those checkdowns, and you didn't. And I think because of that, that put Ava Wallace in this offense in a really bad situation where they had 19 seconds to go 30 yards. That's not and by the way, you have 2 plays to go get 7. So that's just not like a viable, it's just not a good game plan at all. It's just a misuse of clock and just bad management. You had 2 timeouts in almost 2 minutes. There are teams that have done more with less. And I don't know I really feel like they didn't put her in a great position to win that game at the end right there. And so I just don't know about that one when it comes to the Kaiser coaching, if I'm being completely honest right there. I think, we're really looking, and this is about Ava Wallace, right? So I don't want to make it too much about Kaiser, but really looking at it, I mean, there are just plays where Warder just had your number. And not just had your number as in they took away the first 2 looks, but it seemingly felt like they were straight up just locking down every play you were putting out there that wasn't something short. That is a problem, especially in red zone. That ended up being a massive problem because they played you perfectly on defense. I don't think there's a quarterback that could have done better unless she just ended up running the ball and ignoring the play calls from Kaiser's coaching staff, right? But I don't know if there's anything that could have been done by any other quarterback in this situation. It is kind of just what it is here, unfortunately, and they just had their number. And on top of that, I felt like there were just some very, very weird situations Ava Wallace was put in, like that 4th and 7 approaching midfield. Why would you not punt that? You were already struggling to get 5 yards, so why would you go for it on 4th and 7 over? It just doesn't make sense, right? Why would you not use timeouts? Why would you, roll out on this one? Why would you call a failed play twice in a row, right, for 0 yards? Why would you stay in that formation and run a known correlated play with that formation right after that? There's a lot of whys, if you haven't noticed, right? And, it's a learning experience for everyone, but the unfortunate part is that, you don't always get a second chance at these things with your group, and that's just what it is. And so, with all of that being said, Ava Wallace in this game, 253 yards, 81.3%. 39-48, but did throw those 3 picks there. I broke down those 3 picks. I really feel like truly, now that I think about it, truly one of those was her fault. Like, hey, you probably shouldn't have thrown that one to Moberg and allowed Jessica Finley to field that and, take the lead. But even then, the other 2, I just don't know where else you're supposed to go with the ball. And I think there would have been other opportunities to force the ball because there were just plays that just weren't working. And to say that feels insane because you have a roster that is obviously talented enough to go to the national championship. So I truly feel like, Ava Wallace, look, I'm sure she's going to be hard on herself. I don't know if she's listening to this or not. I know she's a perfectionist. She loves this game so much where, it's hard to take some of these losses. Maybe it's hard to, not take it personally. Right? And I'm sure she is because she cares so much about this game. She's played it for so long, and she definitely must have felt like that her team was good enough to win the national championship. Unfortunately, it doesn't go their way. But looking at some of the plays that they were calling, looking at the handling of some of the situations they were in, and it's not like this is a rookie coaching staff. They've been to a national championship before. They've won their conference before. Like, the head coach was an assistant on this team since the beginning. There is no room for rookie mistakes here if you're a coach, right? You put your players in the best position to win, and truthfully, it just felt like they got out-coached. And It may sound like excuses for Ava Wallace, but sometimes that is just the reality of it. Sometimes you get out coached and you got to learn with your coaches and, grow from there. That's all you can do, right? But just from me breaking down this film, I really don't know what more she could have done for them to win this game. The turnover really is the only thing, right? Like maybe if she doesn't hit that turnover, they're able to go downfield and get a touchdown look they want, and the whole momentum shifts from there, right? That's really the only thing. But when you have 98% of the rest of the game to look at and be like, hey, what could have we done here? There's a lot they could have done. There's a lot of things that the coaching staff could have done to put her in a better spot. So I will just leave it right there for now. Either way, very impressive. I thought she was making some plays here that a lot of other freshman quarterbacks under this pressure would not be able to make. Right, will not be able to recognize what is going on and how to, get the most out of this and take care of the ball. And, she led productive drives into the red zone. She put them in pretty decent looks close into the red zone. Like, these weren't like 4th and 15 looks, when they did get into the red zone. Like, they were inside the 10. So that does mean, there was a little bit of good going on when they were there, but just unfortunately, a lack of execution when it came down to, needing a touchdown and getting those touchdowns when you needed them. So there you go there. So with all that being said, let's take a step back. She's a freshman quarterback. First off, there's never been a freshman quarterback, I don't think, unless you count Madison Carrera, but I kind of don't because everyone was new at the time. But outside of that 1 year, there has never been a freshman quarterback to win a national championship in women's college football. Ava Wallace, along with Alexa Wilson of Thomas, were the closest ones to do that. Both fell short, unfortunately, in the national championship by a score. And it just kind of was what it was, right? And so for her to get this far, that is definitely saying something, right? It's saying that she was better than a lot of other veteran quarterbacks who played multiple years and could not get this far. She was able to steer this team this far despite not being able to sit behind and learn from another quarterback, right? She was able to get this far despite, a lot of other teams having experience and whatnot, and not everyone being new, because that is a different experience for sure, right? And so there's a lot of good to be said about this run by Ava Wallace here. I mean, you see the numbers, they're productive, right? You see how far she was able to get into the national championship. Really what it came down to, this was a one-score game. And, there's the one turnover you made that I feel like you could definitely put on her, right? Then the rest, there were other opportunities that could have been helped out by other people, but just weren't. And that's just how the game goes sometimes. It's not a favorable look by any means, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And so there you go there. All of that being said, Ava Wallace was still the most successful freshman quarterback from her class so far, right? She was able to go far with this national championship. I think the NAIA still has the most talent as far as women's flag football goes. The numbers tell you how great she is. The records, as in, her team record, tells you how great she is. How far she was able to go tells you how great she is. Who have watched all of, not all, but like a decent amount of her games and have broken it down in detail, just told you how great she is. I think there's no doubt that she's a talent. If I had to make a comparison, and by the way, I don't know if there's been a quarterback like her in women's college football yet. And plus, by the way, if you are a fan of flag football, college flag football, you should already know the name of Ava Wallace, right? So you kind of know how she plays. So this comparison really is for the people who are not familiar with her game. But if I had to make a player comparison, stylistic comparison, I would say Andrew Luck. First off, Andrew Luck is also from Texas, right? But I think there's a lot of similarities in their games. The one thing that's different is the power. I think there is power to be unlocked in Ava Wallace's deep throws. I think as she gets stronger and, just, grows up as a teenager to a young adult, she's going to be able to make those deeper throws, and that'll support her potential, right? I think Andrew Luck was known for being able to rip those throws deep and whatnot, and if you watch him throw some of these short to medium throws compared to Ava Wallace, I think there's a lot of similarities, right? I think they throw it with a lot of comfort, when they're both healthy and whatnot. And as she hits a true off-season program, she will be unlocked that deep passing ability. I am pretty sure of that. But the thing that really reminds me of Andrew Luck is the IQ, the processing ability, the off-platform throws. That is what reminds me of Andrew Luck. Just his ability to look up even right now, right? In 7-on-7, a format that she's the least familiar with, for her to already be looking off defenders and manipulating defenses, that is next level stuff. That is stuff that Andrew Luck did on a consistent basis. And, if she makes a mistake, it's because she is wanting to force a play and prey on an undisciplined defender, right? Situationally, though, she is not going to make many big mistakes that are going to cost you a game. And, young Andrew Luck, when you watch him, his rookie year in the NFL and his first year in college, he did throw a lot of picks too. Ava Wallace threw like 22 or 70, right? Andrew Luck, I'm pretty sure he threw like 18 to his 25 plus or 30 plus, whatever it was, which is a lot. It's a decent amount. But, there is an adjustment period to this thing, going from high school to college, right? Nonetheless, from one format to a different format, right? From college to pros, there's going to be an adjustment period, right? But with a quarterback like this, who is a perfectionist, who is going to put in the work, who loves the game to her core and is the ultimate competitor, she's going to figure it out. And unfortunately, for these type of players to figure it out, you gotta let them go make mistakes and lose first. Because when it comes back to a similar situation, are you really going to doubt that type of player to make the same mistakes and lose again? The answer is probably not. So, with that being said, I just see a lot of Andrew Luck in her game. Plus, the Texas connection for sure there as well. Very smart players, similar styles in their play, but, Ava Wallace is going to be her own person. And so, with that being said, let's talk about, the outlook, okay? And this is known. This is public knowledge right now. It is known that she is going to be taking a break. She has left Kaiser. Ashlea Klam has also left Kaiser. The difference is that Ashlea Klam has committed to Cal Poly. According to that interview, and once more, I'm going to drop it again. That way, you could check it out, because I think they had really good, productive conversations. But it's the Clock's Running podcast, episode 16 on season 3, available on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. They had some very productive conversations here, but I was able to listen to a decent amount of it. She's taking it sounds like she's taking the year off. At the very least, has to take the summer off because of this shoulder injury. So it'll be a little bit before she's throwing around again. I know she's back in Texas, right? She's focusing on nursing, another thing she's, very passionate about, something she could pour her passions and hard work and work ethic into, and I think that's awesome to hear. I know, she's always been an advocate for mental health as well, so make sure, you check out everything she's had to say about that. Even though she is a very young athlete, young adult, she has a lot to say, and I think it's meaningful things that she has to say about it, especially coming from just a student athlete standpoint, there's a lot of pressures that goes into being an athlete, and not just being an athlete, but being an athlete with a lot of expectations. People that look up to her. There's a lot of pressures that go with being a pioneer of this sport and being a role model to a lot of people. And so absolutely get that and understand her taking a break. Now, is this a retirement for her? If I had to speculate, and, by the way, she's more than welcome to come onto the podcast. Of course, we'd love to have her and Ashley and all these other people come on the podcast and talk about their story, and obviously advocate for Texas to officially sanction flag football, right? But if I had to guess, I don't think she is retired from college flag 7-on-7 forever. It sounds like eventually she's going to get back into fives, which is great, shows obviously that she still has a love for the sport and she still wants to compete and have that competitive edge, right? Now, is she going to leave the state of Texas to play college flag? I think that's a different thing. I think her support system definitely means a lot to her. She's very thankful for it. And, I think that's something that she kind of wants to be around. Now, here's the thing. Texas is going to have a number of flag football programs, okay? If you look it up right now, women's flag football programs here, you're gonna find a lot of D3, maybe some NAIA, but not too many. Not too many, I would say, right now. You got a lot of NAIA D3s as well. You have UTA, who's a D1 technically, UT Arlington. They will be playing in, actually, next year, 2027. You have Texas Wesleyan from North Texas as well. That's another NAIA program. You have Concordia, which I know some people from Texas Fury are coaching that team. They are phasing from pilot to club to full varsity, I believe, next year, located in Austin. You have Our Lady of the Lake University, which I want to say that's the NAIA, if I am not mistaken as well. So you got a number of programs, Shriner to name a few, oh my gosh, I think it's Mary Hardin Baylor. You got some programs for sure here. But if I had to make a prediction, okay, not too long ago, the Big 12 did announce that they wanted to target 2028 for a launch of a varsity women's flag football league, spring of 2028. They're looking for 6 teams at least. So really, when you look at it right now, next year is going to be 2027. That's, giving her a year to take a break. As soon as 2028, you could be looking at some opportunities. Now, I'm just putting this out there. You look at the Big 12 schools with current club flag football programs. You got Arizona State. You got Arizona. You have Central Florida, UCF. And then you have the University of Colorado right now here over at CU. But then you look a little bit farther than that, because that's 4 teams. Assume those 4 teams take it on. You are still looking for 2 more teams to add flag football. And that makes it interesting now. Who are some football teams or some programs in the Big 12, you may ask? Well, right here. You got Baylor down in Texas. You got Houston. You got TCU. You got Texas Tech. Those are 4 Texas teams right there that could have a program. And if they do, that's D1, mind you, if they do have a women's college flag football program, if Ava Wallace is even remotely interested, I am calling the phone. Not only am I offering a full ride, if I got an NIL fund, I am outbidding these other teams. Easily. And you are going to take care of her, keep her in state, around her people, or as close to her people, closer than Florida, right, as you can. And if she's interested, hey, there you go right there. Keep her in state, in the great state of Texas, and play for one of these teams, a TCU, a Texas Tech, a Baylor. Nursing, by the way, Baylor, so there you go. Well, Houston, one of these squads. And Hey, it could get real interesting. That could be real fun to cover here in the future. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if one of those teams end up joining the Big 12 in their first year of flag football and they go ahead and call Ava Wallace. I mean, that's obviously what I would do because I do think she is the next great Texas quarterback. Now, if she decides to hang it up after this year, honestly, you still look at the legacy that she's left behind as a player alone, just looking at her as a player, phenomenal. One of the best club records ever, one of the best college seasons ever, one of the best college seasons by a freshman ever. She has made her name. She has inspired so many people, not only around the country, but specifically at home in Texas that look up to her, that see her on TV, that see her competing at a high level, that see her competing with the best of them, that see her playing with a passion, playing hard, playing through injury, and finding a way to get it done, and putting her team in the best positions to go win these tough games against the best in the country. And it is hard to not be inspired. And then you add on all the other things, off the field as well that I know she has dealt with, that I know she has persevered through. And you got somebody that is really just an amazing person and somebody that you cannot, it's hard to not root for, right? And, we're obviously wishing her all the best of luck. If she decides, that this is it, hey, nothing to be ashamed of. I think even then, this is just the beginning of her future in the sport of football. If that's something she wants to continue to do, I think she could be an excellent coach. I think she could be an excellent spokesperson. She's already been an excellent spokesperson for the game of football, right? I think there's a massive future for her in this game that is waiting for her, that has been built on her hard work through her passion of the game. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were able to highlight some of the greatness of her because, it's been a while. First off, we've been meaning to do a film breakdown for years. And then second, I think this is just the perfect time to do so. I think it's easy to look at a season where you don't win a national championship and end your season with a win and see it as a failure, right? But realistically, you compare it to everyone else's season that has ended, it's really not as bad as it looks. It looks phenomenal when you look at it from a realistic lens, and maybe she's not because, it's still pretty raw and it's hard to not be that competitor and look at anything less than a win or a championship or the goals that you set before the season as a failure, right? But at the end of the day, you take where you started at, you take where you ended at, and you build on top of that. That's how life works, right? And you build towards your next goal. And I think no matter where life takes her, I think us here on the podcast, we were thankful to be able to cover her in this year of college flag football that she was able to play and be able to cover her story. A great one, which, like I said, make sure you check out that podcast and check her out on social media at Ava Wallace FB. I think that's her football page right there, and see what she's all about because I think she has a lot of great things going on here. Like I said, advocate for the game, and she is yet another reason why, Texas should sanction flag football. You see how much she was able to accomplish in 1 year of college. You see how much she was able to do without a sanctioned, laid out varsity system. And you're also able to see how much she has been able to develop as a flag football player without the system that a lot of boys in the state of Texas go through and still are nowhere near half the player that she is, right? That just shows you how much potential and how talented and great of a player and person she is. And she's not the only one. There are so many other, young women, girls in high school, right, or middle school, elementary school in the great state of Texas that love this sport so much. Love the sport so much that they would, be part of a club that would go compete against, other boys and eventually grow into something bigger than that. work the NFL flag circuits, work the club flag football circuits, and, parlay that into a scholarship where she would go halfway across the country to Florida and succeed in her first year, despite competing against other players who had better setups, who were developed since, middle school, high school, elementary school, and, were playing in more structured settings than in Ava Wallace. But yeah, players like her and other players for Texas Fury did all this without the support of the state. Now we are in a position where these young girls have grown into adults. They have paved their own way, and now is the time to pave the way for the rest of the state of Texas to follow in the dirt path that they had to build for him. Truthfully, they're trying to pave it into a real one. They're trying to pave it into a real one by sanctioning the sport first, by making it a varsity sport, by developing these girls competing against each other, giving them a chance to represent their community, giving them a chance to add another chapter to the great history of Texas football. And not just stop there, but give them an opening, give them an opportunity to make their own way after high school. And trust me, there are plenty of opportunities out there on the collegiate level. There are going to be plenty of opportunities out there after the collegiate level on the professional level. There are going to be plenty of opportunities there when it comes to the Olympics, competing on the international level, right? There are opportunities out there, and it is irresponsible for the state of Texas to continue to gatekeep and not sanction girls flag football, because not everybody is able to go through all the things that an Ava Wallace, Ashlea Klam, Lauren Clark are able to do and jump through all these hurdles to go play the sport they love. Not everyone is able to have easy access to a club flag football team. Not everyone is going to even think about playing flag football if it is not presented as an opportunity. And so, when you listen to this, if you made it this far in the episode, thank you, right? But if you listened to this episode and you heard about the greatness of an Ashlea Klam, of an Ava Wallace, who have worked so hard, because mind you, yes, they are working hard because they're competitors and they want to win, but they know this. All the success that they accomplish represents the state of Texas. It represents what can be when it comes to Texas girls and women's flag football. They represent the first step in what can be for all of that. And if you respect their story, if you respect them as people, you will join us in this campaign to get girls flag football sanctioned in the state of Texas. Thank you so much for rocking with us. Make sure you check us out at Playmaker's Corner on social media. We will be posting all of our content there, so you could check all of that out. Hopefully clipping some things from this episode and from previous episodes as we continue to campaign for the sanctioning of Texas girls high school flag football. Once again, brought to you by Biocat, shouting them out once more. We got a combine that we are doing with them here in Colorado on June 10th. Followed by a big-time tournament between Colorado high school flag football teams. If you are a college coach, please reach out to us if you're interested at all. We are trying to get as many coaches to this thing as possible, and we already have a couple coaches who should be coming through here, and I know some accommodations are being made for coaches who are able to go. So just advertising all of that. But once again, thank you so much for rocking with us. Make sure you tune into next week's episode here as we continue to cover women's college flag football, high school girls flag football, and just develop the game wherever we can. But until then, we will catch you next time.